Okay, I'm going to begin in the interest of time. I know a lot of people are loading in as we speak, but we've got a very packed and exciting evening ahead of us, so I don't want to waste any time getting the program rolling. My name is Richard Joy. I'm the Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute, or ULI Toronto, and it is a great pleasure to be bringing to you this exciting town hall that puts the spotlight on a very exciting transit-oriented community vision moving towards implementation, we hope, and that we're presenting in partnership with our friends from the City of Brampton, the University of Toronto School of Cities, and indeed a partnership with the City of Helsinki. If I could just get the slides to move forward, the first thing I would want to do is acknowledge that as a Toronto-based regional organization, we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. I usually at this point also make note, and we'll send it in the link, of a program that we did this past June, that puts some meat and meaning behind the words that I just spoke. You might want to have a look at it at some point in the near future. The next slide, just a little bit of housekeeping. Before we start, not surprisingly, with so many people coming in, we expect over 500, that the audience will be muted throughout the session. However, we do have a Q&A function that we encourage you to use. And as you hear throughout the program, questions arise throughout the program that you would like to have addressed, please use that Q&A function and type them in. And then there's a little bit of democracy into this as well. We won't probably have time to get to every single question, although we will record them because they're very important questions, even if we don't address them live in this town hall meeting. But you can vote by putting the thumbs up on the questions that you see that you think you really like and want to have answered, and literally move them up the priority list, and we'll definitely take the highest voted questions first. The webinar is being recorded, so it'll be available in the future for those who cannot make it tonight. If you're using Twitter, we encourage you to use our handle at ULI Toronto and hashtag Ask Great Questions while you do. Next slide acknowledges very quickly our annual sponsors. We're an organization that relies on the support of our sponsors to do the work that we do. We're not for profit. You'll hear a bit more about that from our chair shortly. We do not lobby. We do not take an active interest in the outcome of any given land use proposal or public policy. But we do engage communities. We do engage municipalities, and we obviously engage the private sector. And we're grateful for the support of these companies to allow us to do the work that we do. My next job is to tee up a video message from our Mayor, Patrick Brown, the City of Brampton. He's someone who I don't think requires much introduction. So with that, I'm going to ask you to roll the tape of Mayor Patrick Brown.
Hello, I'm Mayor Patrick Brown. On behalf of the City of Brampton, I'd like to officially welcome everyone who is tuning in today to discuss yet another exciting project happening in our great city. Thank you to the Urban Land Institute, the University of Toronto School of Cities, and our terrific team at the City for hosting this unprecedented forum. Thank you to our esteemed guests from across Canada, the United States, and our Nordic friends from Helsinki who will be sharing their professional viewpoints. And a very special thank you to members of the public who are with us today. Your participation and input is incredibly important to this type of process. This is your city, and your voices shape how we grow, prosper, and succeed now and into the future. Well done. The most healthy democracies are the engaged democracies. After an extensive consultation, Brampton Council adopted our 2040 vision 2 years ago. It's a vision celebrating a rich mosaic of people coexisting and thriving in harmony. It's a future where people are connected by modern transit, arts, culture, green spaces, with a town center at its heart. And it's a friendly community where you can live, work, play, shop, and learn within a walkable neighborhood. As a forward-thinking city, we are committed to championing smart planning for vibrant, healthy, and complete communities. The Shoppers World Uptown transit-oriented community checks so many boxes. I'm excited to see this vision and more developments like it. This innovative urban hub is off to an amazing start. Many of the formative pieces are already in play, including the LRT coming in 2024 and other supporting public infrastructure investments currently underway. These elements create a more connected and thriving city. Major developers have committed to the Uptown Brampton project, and more are ready to invest. We are leading the way on showing industry that Brampton means business. And it is equally important to develop urban hubs that embrace our cultural diversity with inclusive and welcoming amenities at its core. Events like this one foster an even greater collaboration and expand on a larger conversation over what kind of city we want for our families. I hope you enjoy this session, and again, I thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. I am Emma West, the chair of ULI Toronto, and I'm also a partner at a planning and urban design consulting firm called Bousfields. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this unique town hall program this evening that in so many ways reflects the best of the global mission of the International Urban Land Institute, of which Toronto is one of the many active district councils or chapters. Our mission sets out to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and in creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide by convening multidisciplinary professionals across the private and public sectors. We are not advocates, as Richard said, of any specific land use vision or policy, but we do seek to elevate the conversation to push visions to achieve better outcomes to maximize the public and community good. And that's very much what this evening is all about. Our program includes remarks and presentations from local, provincial, federal, and international speakers, including the City of Helsinki and UN Habitat. With what all this reflects is the importance of the leadership that is being demonstrated by the City of Brampton to begin to realize its bold 2040 vision. What we are seeing in the City of Brampton not only stands out as progressive urbanism in the Toronto region, it's very much noteworthy as an emerging North American best practice. Brampton is showing how modern urban transit-oriented visions can strengthen communities and local economies. So now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our first international speaker, Eduardo Moreno, the Director of City Prosperity Index at UN Habitat. Eduardo is Head of Knowledge and Innovation at UN Habitat headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, and Director Interim for Mexico and Cuba country offices. Prior to this, he was the Chief of Global Urban Observatory from 2002 to 2008, and a Senior Technical Advisor in the Bureau of Africa and Arab States for UN Habitat. He has over 35 years of academic and professional experience in housing and urban development policies, policy evaluation, institutional analysis, global monitoring, and equity and urban poverty issues. His qualifications include a PhD in urban geography and a master's degree in urban sociology from the University of Paris, Sorbonne. So without further ado, I introduce Mr. Eduardo Moreno.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for the privilege that you are giving me to be the first one. Let me start by saying, I would like to connect this to what is happening in the world, which is the pandemic and the responses that we are observing. To tell you that UN Habitat, my team is preparing a report called The State of the World Cities Living with Pandemics. And I would like to highlight only some of these elements that are preliminary findings and important issues here. First one, and perhaps not very surprising, but for some, is that 95% of cases in the world of COVID, 95% of cases are in urban areas. COVID is an urban crisis. But what we are seeing is that as COVID unfolds, it is moving from well-connected international cities, high-level densities, to secondary cities. And this brings to us an important learning, I would say, experience on this, is that we need to use territorial planning and better understanding of the system of cities in countries to respond to the pandemic. As we learn from other experiences, soon, perhaps in many countries, we'll be touching secondary cities, towns, and rural areas. And the responses, as we saw with poverty and others, will be always urban responses associated to these rural areas. We need to understand the role of intermediation, the creation of these responses in a different forms. We have analyzed COVID in 4 different domains. Because of time, I'm just going to highlight 1 or 2 things from each. Impact on governance mechanism and normative work. We have studied 1,000 cities in the world, and we came with a very important conclusion. The best responses to COVID were those that were transparent in nature, that have trust, that articulated responses of civil society, but also that recreated a new governance mechanism in which they articulated provinces, national states, and local responses. This new configuration of governance mechanisms is extremely important. Second, people and places. All of us, we know that COVID and the pandemic touches and exacerbates inequalities. In the world, we see on average that every 5 people dead, 3 are poor and 1 is relatively poor. Every 5 people dead, 3 or 4 live in informal settlements or live in confined areas in Arab countries and other places. But what is interesting in the analysis is that when we try to analyze the spatial importance of, of COVID, we identify that it doesn't match exactly with the slums or with poverty. It matches with the recreation of a new form of spatial vulnerability. We need to understand this vulnerability because infection carries 3 different forms, even if we don't know exactly people get infected. 1, related to place, which is inadequate housing and the space itself that doesn't prevent people to keep healthy distance. Second, has a lot to do with mobility, inadequate mobility. And the third one, with certain category of jobs that are at risk of proximity. We have created an index called a Spatial Vulnerability Index that we are implementing in some countries in order to produce responses. But it is clear that all this has to do with new forms of understanding vulnerability of cities. Something that touches a lot on this important Townhall is the third element, city form and functionality. Number 1, nothing or very poor relation to densities, as we thought at the beginning was the culprit of this. It has to do with some forms of overcrowding, but not with high densities. The studies of the World Bank, UN Habitat, and others are showing that densities, they don't play an important role, but these other elements. What we need to understand, and we would like to think here, is that we need to recreate the notion of proximity. We need to recreate some form of togetherness and understanding how we are going to live in cities and retain public space, and the fundamental notion that we need to redesign cities in a way that we recreate form, function, and some land uses in order to abolish, if I can say, a lot of mobility, to move much more to accessibility. The idea will be to recreate with this notion of chrono-urbanism and others, the fundamental aspect of how we respond in terms of planning and provision of public goods. And the final one, it has to do with urban economy and business models. Cities are being affected in different manners, of course, but what is clear is they are collapsing in the capacity to collect their own resources. They are not receiving the same transfer of national resources or provincial or state level resources. And we are recreating, to a guide of social and economic recovery, some form for city to deal with this. In conclusion, I would say, and tell me if my time is over, I would say we need to rethink in terms of, number 1, it's how we recreate use of data and information as a public good, which is completely missing. And here we are recreating based on on the index of prosperity and other vulnerability index, the capacity of cities to act fast to these problems. Second, to recreate the notion of commons and public goods. And third, to think in terms of this possible use of societal empathy revolution responses in which local authorities, because of what I said at the very beginning, will play a fundamental role at the front of the pandemic. So rethink the role of the state and the new forms of governance mechanisms. I think that will be the most important comment. Thank you very much for the space.
Well, thank you, Eduardo. Very much appreciate you joining us from Mexico City. It is now, and for those of you who just joined, once again, my name is Richard Joy. I'm the Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute, Toronto, and I'm sort of going to be your MC for the evening. So in that duty, it is my great pleasure to now introduce the Honorable Kinga Sharma, the Associate Minister of Transportation of the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, and also a Minister of their portfolio. So Minister Sharma is focused on getting people in the GTA moving. This includes working on a new transit projects like the new Ontario Line subway project, the Scarborough subway extension, the Yonge North subway extension, and the Eglinton Crosstown West extension, which will connect to Pearson Airport. Her comprehensive knowledge of municipal and provincial and federal orders of government has allowed her to effectively address transit concerns of Ontarians and local issues. She came to Canada from Poland when she was 4 years old. As a successful immigrant and a Canadian citizen, she understands the challenges that newcomers face when beginning their life in Canada. Minister Sharma holds a degree in public policy, business and commerce from the University of Guelph, as well as public relation designation from Ryerson University. I'll just say off script, it is a great pleasure to have you back on a ULI platform, Minister Sharma. So with that, I will turn the floor to you.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. And Richard, I want to say a special thanks to you and ULI. I know that you've participated in the engagement process when the province was developing its transit-oriented communities program, and it was incredible. And I'm just very grateful for your participation. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you all virtually tonight. And again, I want to thank the Urban Land Institute for providing this forum to discuss the importance of building vibrant, mixed-use, complete communities connected to transit. I know that everyone joining us today, as far away from Helsinki, are passionate about building thriving and sustainable communities across our region. Our government shares this vision and understands the vital link between transportation planning and urban planning. Transportation planning is intrinsically connected to economic opportunities, livable communities, and making life easier for individuals and families. Making life easier for the hardworking people of this great province is what guides us in all of our decision-making. And as we tackle the uncertainties brought on by COVID-19, it's more important than ever to get it right. The pandemic has huge impacts on public transportation, transit agencies, and municipalities. Throughout the pandemic, our government, including the minister and I, have been consulting with municipalities and transit agencies regularly. Right now, we're making immediate investments to ensure that we can keep transit safe and sustainable. That's why we allocated $15 million through the Transit Cleaning Fund and up to $2 billion through the Safe Restart Agreement to make sure transit vehicles are safe and to help agencies with loss of revenue due to the pandemic. There's no question that public transit specifically is a critical part of the future of transportation. It's efficient, environmentally sustainable, and a solution to the growing congestion issues that are plaguing the Greater Toronto Area. Our government continues to recognize public transit as a top priority. We've committed to the largest subway expansion in Canadian history, a $28.5 billion plan, which you can see right here on your screen, that will deliver subway connections to new neighborhoods, reduce gridlock and emissions, and make it easier to get around the Greater Toronto Area. We're moving forward with the GO expansion program to transform the GO network from a commuter service into a modern service with two-way all-day service and trains every 15 minutes on core segments. And we're investing billions more in local transit projects across Ontario, including, of course, the Hurontario LRT, which is also included on the map. As I'm sure you know, work is also well underway on the new 18-kilometer Hurontario light rail transit, which will connect Brampton's Gateway Terminal in the north to Mississauga's Port Credit in the south along a 19-stop route. This project will help make sure public transit is attractive, affordable, and a low-stress alternative for commuters and families throughout Mississauga and Brampton. It has the potential to transform the way people in Peel Region travel, and that's why last year our government signed a $4.6 billion agreement with Mobilix to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the project over a 30-year term. This LRT project will be constructed in the center of the right-of-way with mixed traffic, including raised, separated bike lanes on either side of the alignment. It's an incredibly exciting project for the people of Peel Region, and I'm thrilled to see that it is happening. But of course, it's not enough just to build public transit. We need to build it faster and better if we're going to meet the future demands. We've all seen the forecasts for population growth in the GTA over the next several decades. We need to make public transit a more attractive option and rethink the way we plan developments if we expect to remain the economic engine of this great country. That's why our government passed the Building Transit Faster Act and the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act just earlier this year. Those acts will help kickstart our economy by getting shovels in the ground faster on our priority transit projects and enable our ambitious transit-oriented communities program around new subway stations. The Building Transit Faster Act will help us tackle the roadblocks that have delayed major transit projects in the past so we can get our subway plan delivered faster. And the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act will allow us to pursue transit-oriented community opportunities along those subway lines. I'm proud to be leading the government's new transit-oriented communities program. This approach will allow for integrated mixed-use communities to be built only on lands that are needed for station construction or are already owned by the government, like surplus lands at GO stations. We are committed to negotiating with prospective partners to achieve objectives that the province and local municipalities share to ensure we build better around these critical pieces of transit infrastructure. We recognize that there are currently other developments adjacent to transit stations that are being planned by private landowners or municipalities. I know municipalities have the jurisdiction to put higher density around transit infrastructure, but note that these kinds of proposals are not part of the provincial government's TOC program. I know everyone listening in today understands the potential that transit-oriented communities have and their importance for preparing us for the future. We have the opportunity, and I would argue, the responsibility to not just build transit stations, but create dynamic, complete mixed-use communities around transit. Transit-oriented communities will provide a mix of housing, including affordable housing, retail, recreation, and community amenities like daycare spaces around transit stations. Our recent legislation may have applied only to the 4 subway projects specifically, but I want to be clear, our transit-oriented communities approach is not limited to new subway stations. Through Metrolinx, we're actively pursuing opportunities elsewhere as well. The planned GO station near Woodbine Racetrack is a perfect example. This new GO station will increase transit access to Humber College, University Guelph Humber, and Etobicoke General Hospital. It will offer opportunities to live and work near a major employer and entertainment destination, as well as better access to the local community and jobs in a zone of significant employment opportunity. And thanks to our partnership with Woodbine Entertainment Group, it is expected to be built at no cost to the taxpayer. And of course, There's great opportunity here with the Hurontario LRT project to integrate transit-oriented communities. The LRT will intersect with 2 GO train corridors along the alignment, including Port Credit GO station on the Lakeshore West line and the Cooksville station on the Milton line, where Metrolinx already owns land. At these sites, we are actively exploring opportunities to build transit-oriented communities that will increase transit ridership, reduce congestion and emissions, and build integrated, complete communities to benefit the people of the region. And we are always looking for opportunities to create partnerships with the private sector and local municipalities to help us deliver on these goals. It's great to see events like this and hear from people who share our desire for better communities, and we need to act quickly. In fact, since we introduced the legislation, as I mentioned earlier, the response has truly been exceptional. We've heard from multiple municipalities across the province who want to make transit-oriented communities a priority as well. And they want us to help them get infrastructure built in their cities faster, just like we're doing with our subway program. We are listening and our government is acting, and we are working very hard for the people of Ontario. We're actively exploring ways to apply the same principles to other major infrastructure projects to modernize the outdated approaches of the past, benefit from our investments sooner, and connect people to places more efficiently. The COVID-19 pandemic has also added another aspect of added urgency to get things done faster. We can't let red tape and long processes get in the way of building for the needs of future generations. We're committed to getting shovels in the ground faster on highways, light rail transit, and other major infrastructure projects like long-term care homes, and to facilitating and accelerating transit-oriented community opportunities wherever possible. And as a part of that work, we will be collaborating with our municipal partners to find out if there are new ways they may need to move local infrastructure projects forward faster. We'll have more to say on that front very soon. I think we can all agree that we can't afford costly, unnecessary delays caused by red tape any longer. As the greater Golden Horseshoe grows, more people need access to transit options that give them the freedom to choose where they want to go, when they want to get there. And by getting shovels in the ground faster on our major transit projects, we can kickstart the economy, create opportunities for businesses, and create more jobs. Now is the time to address infrastructure needs and build to support future generations. Of course, we can't do it alone. We are committed to collaborating with our municipal partners and the private sector to deliver on our goals. And that's why forums such as this are so important. I know the conversations and ideas exchanged tonight will be invaluable as we plan for Ontario's future. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I will have more news to share with all of you in the very near future. I hope you enjoy the rest of the town hall. And again, to ULI, thank you so much for your feedback. And I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Minister. Your remarks were perfect setup for us as we go through our program this evening. Collaboration, alignment, these are keywords that perhaps have not been part of our city building vocabulary, at least in real terms in the past. And I think the focus of your government, for those who are observers of city building and participants of city building over many decades, would recognize that your government's focus on implementation of vision is particularly noteworthy. So thank you for your leadership. It's now my pleasure to introduce our federal representative, who also is the member of Parliament for Brampton South, Sonia Sidhu, who sits on the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health, and in addition is Vice Chair of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. She has a passion for diabetes awareness and prevention, which she champions in her role as Chair of the All-Party Diabetes Caucus. MP Sidhu is also General Secretary of the Canadian-Indian Parliamentary Friendship Group, and is an executive member of both the Canada-Poland and Canada-Portugal parliamentary friendship groups. She further sits as a member of the Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association, the Canada-US Interparliamentary Group, and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Before politics, She worked as a healthcare professional for 18 years, a record that has helped her understand the roots of healthcare needs across the country. She has a bachelor's degrees in political science and worked as a volunteer on political campaigns at all 3 levels of government. She has a proven dedication to her community, evidenced through her volunteer work with numerous community organizations, including the Trillium Health Center. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sonia Sidhu, the Federal Member of Parliament from Brampton South. Thank you to the Urban Land Institute, Toronto, in collaboration with the City of Brampton, City of Helsinki, Greenberg Consultants, and the University of Toronto School of Cities for putting on this very important town hall and for having me here to speak with you. I know that we all share a vision, and that by working together with industry, stakeholder, federal, provincial, regional, and municipal level of government. And of course, our community members, we can make it happen. In Brampton, transit truly does shape our city, and the desire of move away from cars is only increasing. Decades ago, the intersection of Highway 10 and Steele was a well-known community mall and a bus station where Peel Region residents gathered for a cup of coffee. Today, Brampton is transforming to the future through an innovation with a strong vision of healthy communities. I believe this is a very good step for Bramptonians. Last month, our federal government presented a new speech from the throne, which recognized the need for public transit investment in infrastructure across the country. I look forward to working with my Brampton caucus colleagues and the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, as well as our provincial counterparts, to ensure that Brampton receives its fair share. Transit is a critical service when it comes to health, the environment, and our economic recovery, helping residents get from point A to point B safely and efficiently. That is why in late July, the federal government invested more than $45 million to upgrade Brampton Transit in partnership with the province and the city. These projects will include the purchase of 32 new buses and refurbishing of 300 buses, new onboard video cameras, and the most importantly, a brand new downtown transit hub right here in Brampton South. This builds on previous investment from the federal government, like a 2019 announcement to invest more than 11 million for electric buses and charging station in Brampton. This is a new vision for Brampton. Bramptonians are excited about these investments and know they will increase the quality and capacity of our transit system. As well, our city is ranked #1 for mid-sized cities of the future for connectivity and investing in infrastructure. Only further advances this strategic advantage. Bringing investment to our city means creating good local jobs, and we really need during these challenging times. Making clean, smart, and sustainable investment in infrastructure will position us well as we manage the transition to a low-carbon economy. We have committed that by 2023, all new public transit funding will be a zero-emission option. This is a great because it is an opportunity we need to take advantage of, maybe for the new project. I'm proud to be a member of the Standing Committee on Health in the House of Commons, where we have studied the effects that those with chronic health conditions, specifically diabetes, have endured. I have seen firsthand how devastating the disease can be and how preventable these impacts can be with the proper education and great services. Our government knows that issues around healthcare interconnected with every aspect of life. Healthy communities make for prosperous communities. As we have seen with COVID-19, nothing else matters when you or a family member are ill. It makes going to work harder, and it makes going out, enjoying the city more difficult. The integrated delivery of healthy transit-oriented communities in combination with health facilities and services, schools and shopping centers in the form of a 20-minute walkable neighborhood will support these needs. Co-located facilities in an urban community hub would improve the quality of life for so many, further positioning our city as well as the best place to work, live, and enjoy. I share a vision with many of you that Brampton will become an innovative hub through healthy, walkable, transit-oriented communities This shows the true value of partnership and will bring significant value to Brampton's businesses and residents. Brampton is Canada's 9th largest city, and through investment from all levels of government and reallocation of smart and visionary federal investment, such as the $19 billion federal Safe Restart Agreement, we can work together to make our city an example for the world. I'm excited to get to work, improve commutes, cutting air pollution, and strengthening our communities. Dear friends, I agree. Brampton needs transit-oriented communities, and Brampton has a great vision. Let's work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. It's really a great pleasure to have you part of this program this evening. In the interest of time, I'm going to pivot quickly to two of our councillors, local councillors, who are also, of course, as City of Brampton, really playing host tonight as well. So I would first like to ask Councillor Martin Medeiros of Ward 3 and 4, Chair of the Planning and Development Committee, to speak, followed by Regional Councillor Paul Vicente, who's the Vice Chair of Economic Development Committee. Councillors, we're just a tiny bit over time, so if we can ask you to keep your remarks as tight as possible. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Medeiros.
Oh, thank you very much, and I'll keep this very short. And I'll thank you to Brampton staff for a nice speech that I won't read from. But I'll just speak to you more as a resident, someone who was born and raised in Brampton and grew up in the surrounding area in Shoppers World, and who currently resides around Shoppers World. I've had the pleasure and the experience of living in cities like Brussels in Belgium and in Rome, Italy, and also in Lisbon, Portugal. And I can tell you, I didn't know what it meant to have and live in transit-oriented communities until when I returned back to Brampton and living by the Shoppers World area. You know, people don't understand the importance of it. And I can tell you, you know, the excitement that's being built when I think of my son who's going to university in 2 or 3 years, the idea of being able to walk out of the house and be able to get transit to go to downtown Toronto or whatever he decides when it comes to schooling. I think of my parents who are very quickly about to not being able to drive anymore, and the sense of isolation that they sometimes feel, and then soon with the transit-oriented community, that type of impact. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I know there's a lot more smarter people on this conference who will talk to you about the numbers and facts, and we have great Brampton staff. I thank them, great partners at the province and the federal government. So I thank you for their community investments. But I can tell you how meaningful the impact on people's lives this will be in this area. And I can tell you from a business investment perspective, my conversations as the chair of planning really derives around the potential and unlocking the potential of what we call the upper part of the city of Brampton. So I wish everyone well. I thank you very much. I look forward to some of the learnings and best practices, and to those from outside of our country, and I know there's people in Helsinki and so on. Please come pay us a visit when you come to Canada and come down to Brampton. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening and continued good work.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Gary.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone who is joining us today. At City Hall, we are committed to delivering the best possible experience for the residents of this great city. As a part of being, a large part of achieving this goal is being proactive in planning for our future and the future that we will leave behind for our kids. Many feel that planning decisions in the past decades ago, in some cases, resulted in Brampton growing outwardly too quickly. Today, we understand just how urban sprawl can cost cities and our quality of life. The direct cost of urban sprawl can easily be quantified in dollars and cents by looking at services like waste, roads, and utilities. But there are other costs that are far more difficult to measure, like the human costs of pollution, a dependence on cars, and most importantly, the time lost traveling. That time would be so much more better spent if we were with our families and our loved ones. Gaining that time back is what a 20-minute walkable neighborhood and a 26-hour city is all about. As Vice Chair of Economic Development for the city, I also look at development through the lens of the business community. We are constantly engaging with local business leaders on ways that we can help advance economic growth, and their feedback directs these conversations. Complete communities are not complete without a vibrant economic component, and the proposed concepts for developing Uptown includes much of what we need to see, such as providing the necessary amenities and welcoming environments for people to live, learn, work, and play, having communities planned for and mapped out ahead of time, and understanding the landscape for pedestrian mobility, transit, and even parking are all crucial to help businesses have the confidence to make investments in any neighborhood. Simply put, having these key elements in place prior to transformation helps our businesses to succeed now and in the future. That's just some of the many reasons why I am so excited about our vision for Uptown here in Brampton, and I hope that you are too. Thank you everyone for listening. Thanks to all the speakers who came ahead of us. And now, Richard, back to you.
Thank you very much, councillors. I want you all who are in the audience tonight to remember this evening, because you're going to remember some political leadership that you haven't probably seen, none of us have, in this kind of a moment in city building, and it's just truly remarkable. So I'm just blown away, frankly, at what we're seeing in that leadership. Now we're moving into the meat of the evening with our first big panel, and I'm delighted to turn the floor over to, starting with Yvonne Young, who's the Manager of Urban Design, the City of Brampton. We have put our next three speakers' bios up for you to read quickly in the interest of time, just to speed up some time. But I do need to take a word to say thanks to Yvonne, whose vision this evening and this entire process really is this not just a vision for moving the transit-oriented community for Brampton forward, but she's also leading in her role as a board member of Urban Land Institute Toronto, three more of these over the next 10 months around the region. This is an incredible movement that Yvonne is leading, and you're so lucky in Brampton to have her as a resident employee and staff and leader in the city itself, so as Manager of Urban Design. So Yvonne, over to you to lead the next panel for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you, Richard. I would also like to introduce my other two partners making the presentation together. The first one, Ken Greenberg, an urban designer, teacher, writer, former director of urban design and architecture for the City of Toronto. Also a member of the ULI Toronto Advisory Board. So there's a lot of knowledge sharing that we are utilizing the broader ULI global family for tonight. He's also the member of Canada and University of Toronto honorary doctorate for remarkable contribution to urban design. So we are very lucky to have Ken working with us closely in this process, particularly orchestrating how we can utilize a meaningful collaboration to think outside of the box. The second speaker that is going to join us tonight is Mehdi Samitiki. He is the interim director of the University of Toronto School of Cities, and Mehdi has been focusing on finding creative solutions to infrastructure, planning, and finance. And we're very lucky to be working with Mehdi, finding creative solutions, particularly looking at how we can find a way to do co-located facilities and having those early on in the community. He also leads the Creative Mixed Use Project, which is providing a pool of between public and private sector to collaborate on making the real mixed use happen across the GTA. So without further ado, I'm going to do a quick share screen and we're gonna kick off our presentation tonight. So I'm very excited tonight to be able to share with you a city building story that actually started 3 years ago when I joined the Urban Land Institute leadership team, looking for opportunity to create a forum just like tonight, to bring in diverse voices and forward-thinking ideas to our community, particularly focusing on how to make our world a healthy place for our residents and businesses, and also a welcoming landing place for our immigrants' families and a place for opportunities for our next generation. So I was also an immigrant, came to this country as a teenager around 30 years ago, and was fascinated by how welcoming Canada is. I remember how the community has gone above and beyond to help me and my family to not just settle down, but also be an active, engaging member to contribute back to the community. So through this journey, I have seen a lot of energy and valuable skills that has been unleashed through the right kind of built environment that give people the freedom to connect with each other, to learn and to business close to where they live, to not worry about the need of driving on long commuting, and also to be able to walk to our daily needs where parks, schools, daycare, library facilities, and community facilities is right nearby. So all these are fundamentally the elements that is waiting to be untapped. And the way I look at it is that these are fundamentally the valuable untapped asset that each of the communities within GTA and also globally has, that through a 20-minute walkable neighborhood, potentially using that with a combination of urban community hub as an anchor can be a new growth model for unlocking the TOC. So to kick off our presentation, we want to share with you a couple of videos created by our local youth and our very culturally diverse urban design team at the City Hall. We are hoping this will give you an on-the-ground experience of what is within Uptown today, and also how it can be in 2024 when the LRT is coming to the location and beyond. So I would like to flip it over to Denise.
My name is Arkan.
My name is Chelsea.
My name is Matthew.
My name is John.
My name is Shamir.
My name is Timerl.
And my name is Jessica, and we are the Urban Vision Youth Council.
As a teen, I'm always on the go. That's why the terminal is so important to me. Despite its size, it's bare, a roof and a few metal benches. It needs to be a cushion for its 100,000 travelers. It would be complete with Wi-Fi, a waiting area, and better shelter. The business center isn't flawless either. It's big, so rentable bikes would help.
After studying for hours, a peaceful walk to a park can really lift my mood. But these moments get ruined by the obnoxious noise pollution from nearby streets. Incorporating a noise barrier between the residential and recreational areas will finally bring the peace and tranquility to all park goers.
Right now, the Uptown Hub is a hub for not an awful lot. As teens, we all just pass through, stopping for some bubble tea at most. But imagine this, keeping those bubble tea shops, but building a whole vibrant community around them.
A great city is one that is easily accessible and walkable. We want to take Uptown from the way it is, major roads and parking lots, and make it into a model pedestrian hub. Bordering these wide pedestrian walkways would be brilliant murals, community chalkboards, and bustling local businesses.
Creative hangout spaces are an integral part of the youth experience. Recreational cafes can host everything from arts nights to study sessions with my friends, while board game cafes are great hubs for teens to gather and enjoy a huge catalog of games over a delicious meal.
Speaking of group experiences, my friends and I always need a place to practice for our dance, train for the table tennis team, or even just relax after the exam. Comprehensive recreational hubs like community centers, equipped with dance studios, sports equipment, and gyms, are an absolute must in the teenage experience.
I love taking nature pictures in the parks and green spaces around, but with a revitalized and activated streetscape, I would drag my friends to the Uptown area just to take photos together. And of course, while we're there, we'll be sure to enjoy the vibrant culture, the cafes, the recreation centers, and the sound-protected green spaces. What's better, we'll get home in time because of the improved transit systems. That right there, that's the teenage experience that we want to have in 2040.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I live and work in Uptown. It's been great seeing Uptown grow over the last few years. In my spare time, I run a volunteer program that provides residents the opportunity to connect with others and become more involved in their community. I also host an online platform called My Uptown. Here are some of our active members.
My name's Nicole. Both myself and my husband recently moved into Uptown, where we both work full-time. We just purchased an apartment and chose to settle here with a plan to build our family. We were attracted to Uptown's convenient lifestyle and family-friendly amenities. During the day, I work at a collaborative co-working space, and my husband works at a nearby office building near the transit hub. There are also always a lot of things happening in the Uptown TOC in the evening. Today, we're going to be taking a short walk before checking out the local dance show at the community hub.
Hi, my name is Mark. I was looking for a new place to live to move to with my daughter, and since I don't want to own a car, it meant that we had to find a place close to a school, parks and playgrounds, and this area provides all of that. For work too, it's very convenient. As a consultant, I can do most of my work from home, and if I have a client meeting, I book a room at the community hub. Weekends, we often travel to places, starting with the streetcar right at the intersection. We have relatives in Waterloo, which is easy to get to by train, and even the airport is more accessible than most places I lived in the GTA.
Hi, I'm Karen. Living in Uptown Brampton, I find it convenient to balance my life as a working mom. The community hub supports so many of our needs. As an artist, I am a lifelong learner, and the community hub offers many opportunities for me to broaden my expertise. Walking home, we can reset from our busy day. We stop at the neighborhood park or walk along the ravine trail to take in the sights and sounds of nature.
Hi there, my name is Richard. I'm currently a student at Sheridan College, but I also intern with a local tent company at the Shoppers World Community Hub. As someone who lives an active lifestyle, I enjoy using the robust cycling network to get where I need to go. For instance, on my way to work, I actually bumped into one of my managers. I saw this as a great opportunity to bounce ideas off one another about local tech trends, and as we shared a cup of coffee in the plaza, we discussed how we can improve our business.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I retired and moved to this neighborhood last year, and I love this place. I love the views from my apartment's balcony and catch a breath of fresh air. I enjoy the walks in the neighborhood on my way to the cooking class at the Urban Community Hub. As an ecologist, I love to volunteer at the community garden in the afternoon and at the same time connect with my friends.
Thank you, Denise. So what is fascinating about Uptown Brampton is that a couple of years ago, Council endorsed a very forward-thinking Brampton 2040 vision, which is fundamentally making the shift from a car-oriented community to a city built by a collection of transit-oriented communities. We are now at the implementation stage, and what is shown on screen in here, which is part of the vision, is the Uptown Brampton TOC, starting at Hurontario-Steeles, where the LRT will be coming in 4 years. We're very excited that this marked the beginning of a 4-part series of similar conversations that will take place over different parts of TOC within the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Also the beginning of a new way to build cities that is based on collaborative city building. So last Friday, we have invited close to 200 city building professionals, including representatives from 3 levels of Canadian government and executives from Finland, Netherlands, and Sweden, and also all of the 7 local developers and other private sector executives within the GTA. In addition, also the community leaders and thinkers from University of Toronto, the ULI family, and also some of the well-renowned practitioners in the field of design, mobility, economics from Toronto, Chicago, and New York. And over a half-a-day session, the group has collaborated and think about how we can create an opportunities for Uptown Brampton, particularly focusing on how a creative collaborative model can unleash some of the value that is lost in the current planning process. And what we find is interesting about this process is that the value of a collaboration and also the opportunities for us to create an international hub of knowledge sharing. So therefore, as part of our opening remarks, we have UN Habitat providing remarks with us. So the City of Brampton is collaborating with UN Habitat and Urban Economy Forum, looking at creative way of how we can use knowledge sharing and using new technologies such as GeoHub to find an opportunity to provide for a greater healthy community. And what we learned from Helsinki is interesting is that the value of a convenient lifestyle and also the value of early delivery of community infrastructure can give back residents an hour a day. Coming back to Canada, what's interesting about the Greater Horseshoe is that It is the fastest growing global city region in North America. 2/3 of the growth are outside of Toronto. 3/3 of the growth are immigrants. And in the past, our car-oriented environment has cost us as close as $4 billion per year due to physical inactivities and obesity. So with the arrival of the LRT, we have the opportunity to change that. And what is interesting is that within Brampton, within the Peel region, has invested in technology and thinking about what is the number out there and trying to find out what are the needs that we need to put a laser focus to resolve. And what is interesting about the report that come out from Peel region in collaboration with other medical officer of health is looking at within Peel region, 60% of the residents are obese. And more alarmingly is that 1 in 4 of the children, they're walking to school. So as part of our model in here, we are trying to find a creative solution, how we can repositioning public health as the front and center of city building design, and using that to solve 2 fundamental issues. One is chronic diseases to reduce obesity and diabetes. And secondly, is also infectious diseases through ensuring our built environment has easy access to parks and public open spaces. And the opportunity arises when there's rapid transit investment coming to Brampton. And what is interesting about Brampton is that this municipality is connected to the Toronto through the LRT system, is connected to the rest of the GTA through the Future Bus Rapid Transit, and is also connected to the broader region through the all-day two-way GO services. From that perspective, we see there's a lot of opportunity through the dot that you see on screen in here, imagining all of those are collection of a 20-minute walkable neighborhood urban community hub. What is interesting about Brampton is also the diversity, and we have an opportunity to utilize the new 20,000 residents that is coming to the city every year and using that to create a landing ground, particularly focusing on Shoppers World around Uptown Brampton. And the reason why we call it Uptown, although geographically it's actually south of downtown, is that from the overall GTA perspective, that's the new gateway to the Brampton, and that's the new landing place that we want to create a welcoming environment for our future residents and also our next generation of the future population. So the stars align when the province has a clear mandate for transit-oriented communities, and also globally with the 20-minute neighborhood as a model. And looking at international best practices, what is shown on screen in here is an evidence showing that in Helsinki early on, the value of the master plan process, using that for collaboration, and also using that to put a laser focus to put the investment of early community facilities right in the heart of the community, use it as a stimulus for growth. And what is encouraging within Peel region and City of Brampton is that council has also created a green tape condition for development, both for public development and for private development. And through that, with a combination of Vision Zero, MTSA, the Brampton 2040 vision, and also the city has supported the city-led design excellence through really being proactive and using the City Hall to orchestrate a combination of different models for collaboration, particularly focusing on creating precinct planning and design, having pre-application co-design service, and also thinking about how we can animate the public realm, not just for the end state, but think about creative meanwhile strategy solution as well. So what we want to show you tonight is a work in progress model that is actually happening in the ground at the moment. This is a model right at the intersection of Hurontario and Steeles, and we are working with 7 different developers, looking at 13 million square feet of public and private investment happening all within a 20-minute walking distance right at the center of Hurontario and Steeles. And over the last 7 months, we have experienced this really unprecedented collaboration among the province, region, city, nonprofits, and developers. And we would like to use tonight to tell you this story of fundamentally how we are shifting from 2018, when council first adopted the Brampton 2040 vision, to make the shift and thinking about from that, the 6 years the 6 years onwards, when the LRT is coming in 2024, how we can grow the community from the current 25,000 population to the anticipated 100,000 population, all living and working within the circle. And fundamentally, it's focusing on creating a walkable solution to ensure that the 40% of the residents who are now the seniors, children, and youth, that demographic can be maintained, and making sure that is a landing ground and a place for all. So very quickly want to show you where the site is located and also walk you through some of the high-level history. So Uptown Brampton, this location has attracted investment from the private industry since the 1960s. And at that time, the mixed-use development is designed in a way and delivered in a way that is quite segregated in terms of the uses. What is interesting is that in 1970s, when the city first has the bus service coming into the area, we start to have the kind of combination of different uses coming on the ground, but they are provided in a way that is still car-oriented environment. And the opportunity arises now with the LRT coming to the area, and we are in the stage 3, which is looking at really having an opportunity to utilize the vertical mixed uses to create transit-oriented community. So what is shown on screen in here is a rendering from one of our development partners, RealCAD, of the vision of shop as well. And imagining how we can use this to unlock the potential while utilizing the existing 160-acre of open spaces and the surrounding public spaces and public facilities, and positioning those as valuable asset to the new neighborhood. So in 2020, this is a very recent report just released by Hansen. It's a report that looking at the growth for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. What is identified is the ingredients of what we can use to make the 20-minute neighborhood happen. The first ingredient is identify that 41% of the jobs are going to be located within walkable neighborhood. In other words, those are the local jobs. And what is interesting is that with COVID, with the new economy that is now slowly emerging, there's going to be anticipated more daytime population. That means there's also opportunity to design the spaces in a way that provide for really viable and adaptable ground floor uses, particularly focusing on the 76% of the youth and families that we anticipate to be coming in each of these TOC across the region. Another element that is interesting we learned is that the use of technology. So Peel region has been at the forefront of using technology to really track what is the current collision rate and the performance standard at this location at Hurontario-Steeles. And what's interesting is that from the region perspective, there's a goal to reduce the collision by 10%. But what in fact is happening over the last 2 years is that at this location, collision rate has increased by 40%. From our perspective, when we're imagining the anticipated amounts of 100,000 of population coming to this neighborhood, we really want to make the shift and working collaboratively with the region, with the province, and also with the developer to find creative solution and how we can transform this into the kind of urbanizing Hurontario that we see on screen in here. What is fundamentally interesting is that how important it is to create a safe neighborhood by creating a welcoming ground. So this is a quotation from Andre Brumfield, one of our speakers from the workshop, talking about the importance of creating mixed income housing to ensuring the ground floor area is orchestrated in a way that creates a strong sense of neighborhood, and also having a different attitude towards nature so that everybody, young and old, regardless of income, they have an equal access to the open spaces. And we also believe that if we're able to orchestrate and facilitate and leverage the current opportunities of repositioning infrastructure, focusing on improving the social and economic good, we can distinguish Brampton and also other TOC within the GTA across Canada and also beyond. What is exciting to share with you is that this model has also attracted international attention. So as part of the workshop that we had last Friday, we also have the ULI Healthy Places Initiative and also ULI Curtis Infrastructure Initiative, positioning this as part of the global best practices, looking at how we can really repositioning education, investing in youth and use that to speed up economic recovery and also improve the overall competitiveness. And what we're working on right now is an expandable model, thinking about how we can celebrate the policy from the provincial policy statement, looking at co-location of facilities, but doing it in a way that is expandable. So meaning as the population grows, as the demographic changes, both the indoor and outdoor facilities through a campus design can be expandable. So sharing with you is some of the initial floor plans that we are doing in collaboration with Diamond Swift Architects. I'm looking at the opportunity to create a setting that when the whole family is coming to these facilities, it's not just about going to schools or daycares or using the libraries, but it's really creating a new form of community life that is building community leadership and embracing healthy living in a sustainable way. Knowing that a city is not going to be built in one day, we also have a lot of learning, including our friends from Scandinavia, looking at how we can use creative placemaking from day one to give a sense of the culture diversity of the city and also give a sense of attraction and use that to create meanwhile a placemaking solution to bridge the gap between the early phase of development to the ultimate build out. So now I'm going to flip the floor to our partner, Ken Greenberg, to continue with the rest of the presentation.
I'm just going to jump in on a time check. Sorry, Ken, and that was an incredible presentation, but we are at least 15 minutes behind schedule, and that is going to eat into audience community Q&A at the end, which we cannot do. So I'm afraid, Ken and Maddie, I'm going to have to ask you to accelerate your presentation so we can hopefully catch up a little bit of that time. And audience Q&A, again, just a reminder, you can use the button and you can vote for questions you most like to get them up to the top. But I am asking our next two presenters, I'm afraid, to just accelerate your presentations.
Thanks, Richard. I want to say it has been a special pleasure for me to work with Yvonne and the team in Brampton for the last year and a half on this. This is really the fulfillment of that 2040 vision. And it really starts with this quote from Jane Jacobs that if a city is going to work for all, it has to be made by all. And what we're trying to do is apply design thinking led by the city in order to bring all the different partners together. Next. Next slide. So in order to do that, and this has been an ongoing process, and we pushed it even further last Friday, is to try and get a good understanding in developing a design-led framework as to what each of the sectors need to work with the others. What does the public sector need? What does the private sector need to be successful? What does the community need? And what does the nonprofit sector lead? Richard, I'm following your advice and I'm going to go through this rather quickly. Next. And in aid of that, we're looking essentially at 3 different timeframes and 3 different areas. So ranging from a 30-year look at a 9 square kilometer larger district, zeroing in on a neighborhood precinct, one of several, but the first one around Shoppers World, with a 10 to 15 year build out, and then individual parts of that, doing all of this simultaneously as individual buildings and open spaces get developed. Next. 2 key drivers for this are the 18-kilometer LRT that Minister Sharma spoke to, which is arriving at Steeles in 2024 and is the reason why a lot of this is happening. And then something else which has been basically hidden in plain sight, which is the enormous resource of these creek valleys, Fletcher's Creek and Etobicoke Creek, which bracket this area. And it's no accident that when the youth were showing what they appreciated in the area, the thing that was most positive for them was the natural environment. Next. So this is the 9 square kilometers, and you can go straight to the next. Within that larger area, the circles represent a radii of 1.6 kilometers, or roughly the 20-minute walk The three in yellow, including the Uptown Core at Shoppers World, are works in progress. Sheridan College was actually ahead of us in developing its master plan on Fletcher's Creek, and then down in the lower right, the CAA lands, where the city has developed the master plan, and the two in white are in a sense on deck, Uptown East and Uptown Gateway, but there's interest in developing all of these next. So going back to that green network, the idea is to take full advantage of those creeks and to actually stitch them right through these neighborhoods. Next. That second element of transit and active transportation, you can see bus rapid transit on Steeles, the LRT coming up here, Ontario, rapid transit on Kennedy, but also very importantly, the fine blue lines, which is active transportation. These are building on Brampton's bike lane plan and taking it right through the hearts of these communities. Next. In the magenta color is something really important, and you see in the lower left an ambition in the 2040 plan, which is to transform these major suburban arterials with transit, with active life, with active transportation into a different kind of places. And on the lower right, the representation of the time it takes of people with different physical abilities to actually cross a major intersection. Next. So now we're going to zero in the circle into the Shoppers World first precinct at the Uptown Core. And this is an image now in 3 dimensions of what that looks like. And you see outlined in black the 7 developers who have come forward all at the same time. What is really important about this focus on the 20-minute walkable neighborhood is, from a public health standpoint, this addresses both the issues of chronic disease, a lifestyle that contributes to the kind of diabetes, hypertension, heart disease that Minister Sidhu, or that Member of Parliament Sidhu was talking about, as well as infectious disease, as noted by Peel Public Health, as well as climate change. It essentially deals with all of these. Next. So then we, at this scale, zoomed in scale, we can see those green networks at an even finer grain. Next. The blue networks at that finer grain, so that every part of this is really functioning well in terms of cycling and walking. Next. And making sure that the edges where the buildings meet the public spaces are animated and active, not all with retail, but with public facing uses. Next. And now we're going to zoom in once more to the heart of this, which is the community hub, a combination of school, recreation center, library, daycare, all under one roof, with arts and culture, with an entrepreneur center, and building off the existing Kenneth Park. So this building ends up as a kind of pavilion in the park, and there's a 4-minute or 300-meter walk to the transit hub, which will occur at Steeles and Hurontario with the LRT. This is a kind of x-ray through buildings. These are not the actual buildings. They haven't been designed yet, but they illustrate the intentions, working with RioCan for what they are proposing. And they show the kind of life and activity that will animate this neighborhood. Next. It is that link, that particular link, that 4-meter walk is absolutely essential. This is what we have to get right, and everything feeds into that. And this illustrates the kinds of things that are being planned for this 20-minute walkable neighborhood. Next. And this is a place that has to work at all hours. People work shifts. They're not all working 9 to 5. They're working from home. And so thinking of this as a nighttime place, as a place which is welcoming and safe through all hours. And of course, we live in Canada. We have to think about how it works in winter as well. Next. And finally, zeroing in on a tough nut to crack, which is that intersection. at Main Street, Hurontario, and Steeles, how do we actually make the development that's occurring on all four quadrants, all four corners here, with large numbers of people, the 100,000 people that Yvonne was talking about, being able to walk safely across this intersection, get access to the transit. And you can see on the right what it looks like today. On the upper right is a diagram of intentions by RioCan, the major developer at Shoppers World. And this is something the city and the developers will have to work on together very carefully. When we had the event on Friday and we had the 200 people, we got fantastic feedback in breakouts, and you can see the range of comments that people were providing us. It was a tremendous learning experience for the project. And I want to stress that we are really at the beginning. The whole process of engaging the entire community, going back to the Jane Jacobs quote, is what this is all about. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maddie Semyuticki.
Thank you, Ken. It's a real pleasure to be with everyone tonight to talk about such an important redevelopment. I think what we're building here is something that's special for Brampton and in fact is a broader model that will be seen right across the region. The idea of transit-oriented communities is now front and center, and I would argue more important than ever. And I saw in the Q&A that there is a discussion about, is now the right moment to be thinking about a transit-oriented mixed-use type of community. Let me flag that. Yvonne, next slide, please. Let me just highlight that at the current moment, what we're facing is, in fact, three intersecting crises. The first and most obvious and imminent one is the public health crisis around the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're all experiencing that in our daily lives. But two related crises, one of climate change and a third crisis of inequality, unaffordability, and systemic racism are really also plaguing our communities. In fact, we have these three intersecting crises that are very much urban. They have their origins in cities, in the ways that we built our cities, in the ways that we travel, in the amounts of pollution, and then in the ways that we price housing and mobility, and the way that in many ways people are excluded. So, but cities also hold the solutions. And I think that's what's so pivotal here, is that cities have been both in many ways challenges and have been challenged by these crises, these intersecting crises, but they also hold the solution. And at its core is this notion of collaboration and collaborative advantage. And you've heard, I think what is so special and exciting about what's happening here in Brampton is that you have all of the different levels of government, private sector, public sector, community groups, different branches of government looking to come together through what we might call the collaborative advantage. Collaborative advantage brings people together and recognizes that more can be done together than any one partner could achieve on their own. And I think that's something that's really a special driver of this project. And you see all of the different partners that have come to the table and are looking and thinking about how we build a different type of community, one that is more resilient and responds to the intersecting crises that we're currently facing. Next slide, please. And where this really comes together and becomes real is in the community hub. And Ken mentioned at its core a daycare, a school, a community facility, parks, as well as arts and culture and a tech hub. This is the beating heart of a community. If you think about what makes communities special, what brings people together, it is the schools where the kids meet each other, and where strangers become neighbors, at the school gates as they drop off and pick up their children, in the libraries where people share access to knowledge and study, in the public atriums of these type of buildings. And to put this type of facility, this community hub at its core, a building that is scalable, that can grow with the community, is really a central feature of this development. And I would add to it the idea of building long-term care and a community that can house people of all different ages and is a multi-generational community. And really transit is what unlocks it. Transit is what enables a 15-minute neighborhood where people have access to live, to work, to play, to reach appointments and medical treatment, and to go through and live an entire life in a community. This is the type of neighborhood that is being built from the ground up through collaboration. And finally, this doesn't come without its challenges, and I think it's important to recognize that. Transit-oriented communities have been difficult to deliver. We've had these ideas for a long time and have struggled to actually bring them to action. And I think what is really paramount and exciting about what's taking place in Brampton is that there's all of the partners are at the table saying, how do we break down these barriers? How do we pull down the silos between public sector, private sector, and bring the community in, enable the community to participate and meaningfully shape the plan and the vision. But also, how do we pay for all of this investment? What are the funding tools that enable us to draw on different resources from different partners to make this a reality, and to spread risk between the different partners in order to recognize a community that will evolve over time and learn from initial experiences. And really, you can think of it as thinking outside of the contract lines. This isn't about a set of contractual relationships. This is about a deep, meaningful set of partnerships and collaborations that will drive change and bring forward a new approach to development that will lead to a different type of community that is stronger, more sustainable, equitable, and just. So I'll leave it there. I'll turn it back over for the next set of speakers. Thank you.
Maddie, thank you. That was great. We caught up a little bit of time there, and I appreciate that you had to compress your remarks. Again, reminding people, and I see there's lots of questions on the Q&A and the opportunity to vote up questions that you really want answered. We'll be able to hopefully get to a few of them at the end of this program. I'm going to keep things moving along very quickly. The next section of our program is coming to you by way of tape. It's nearly 2:30 in the morning in Helsinki. So we accommodated our next two speakers by video. The first is a short video from the Deputy Mayor for Urban Environment in the City of Helsinki, Anni Sinimäki, and we'll run that, and then I will introduce Jani Moles.
Hello everyone, greetings from Helsinki. As Helsinki, we are really happy and excited to participate in the discussion of the growth of the Greater Toronto area. As you probably might know, Helsinki is a city where we also face the challenges and also the excitement of growth. We have been growing rapidly for more than 10 years. Our two main strategic goals how to build the city is expand the urban core, the city center area, and also we aim to densify the former urban centers to be more dense, more urban, more full of life. At the moment we are here in Kalasatama, of which you will hear more in detail. This is a former port area, a typical place in Helsinki to build the city further. This will be a residential area of more than 20,000 people, but also a significant workplace for thousands and thousands of people. Where we are investing, what does the growth require from us? I would say that two kinds of investment, especially public transport. Everything that we are building, we're actually building along rail lines. We are investing in light rail and also we have been investing in more heavy rails. And then we are investing in energy system change. Helsinki is still at the moment using coal to heat itself, and we will get rid of coal. We have two power plants that use the coal for heating, and first one we will get rid of by 2024 and the second one by 2029. And also there we will have new interesting areas in former power plant areas, how to further develop the city. I wish you fruitful discussions, and I truly hope that Helsinki's experiences and how we have done things will inspire you and be of some help.
Great. And our next speaker by tape is Yanni Amolas, Head of International Affairs for the City of Helsinki. At the end of his presentation, a few really great questions that Yvonne and Ken have asked Yanni to round out his program. So let's jump right into that just to keep things moving.
Nice to join you, even if virtually through video. I had the pleasure of being there in person last year, and I would have very much liked to do so this year as well, but for obvious reasons, wasn't able to do so this time. I just wanted to run through a couple of learnings from my hometown of Helsinki that I believe are relevant for the ambitious development projects that you have ongoing in Brampton and the Greater Toronto area. What we are experiencing in Helsinki is a extremely rapid growth and really happening near the urban core, the historic urban core. All these areas that are highlighted in white here are new development areas that are being built around the traditional city center, which is in the middle of the picture. All these areas have been freed up by the moving away of the port to the eastern parts of the city, which allowed us to build on those brownfield areas entirely new neighborhoods for tens of thousands of people. Just a couple of sort of highlights of the policies that we're implementing across the city, but particularly in these new areas. One of them, which is now highlighted in this area of Jätkäsaari, which was at the bottom of that previous picture, is the housing policy of mixing different kinds of residential buildings. So the general policy in Helsinki is that we plan to have a sort of a healthy mix of subsidized and unregulated construction and housing, not only across the city, but even in individual neighborhoods. So this entirely new neighborhood that's being built in Jätkäsaari, you can see with the color coding that even within an individual block, you would have different kinds of housing, from the sort of the social housing provided by the city to state subsidized sort of intermediate solutions to completely sort of market-based, unregulated, owner-occupied or rental buildings in the same territory, in same neighborhoods, and even in the same blocks. The other element that we've taken very seriously in developing these new areas is to make sure that the public services are in place when people start moving in. This is a picture of the new school, including the kindergarten in Kalasatama. So not only making sure that it's in place, but that it's also a sort of a nice-looking building that we've invested quite a bit in. This, as you can see a little bit from this picture, not a lot of development is ready around the school yet. So really focusing on getting the school in place soon enough, so that once people start moving in, the services are in place already. In addition to the school, also the healthcare clinics were built in Kalasatama area early on as well. The Kalasatama area, which is pictured here, was based around the existing metro line, which is through the middle of the picture here. So a new metro station was built right in the middle of that picture, and then the Kalasatama neighborhood was started to sort of build out from there. Right on the metro station, we have some high rises, and then the stories of the buildings go down as you expand further away from the metro station. However, it was known from the beginning that the metro station is not sufficient in itself, or the metro line is not sufficient in itself. So the dark lines on this picture are the new tram lines that are being built to provide sort of further connectivity to the residents of Kalasatama area. And in this focus, there's two tram lines: the one going up north, and then the one going across the southern part of the southern tip of Kalasatama, which for that link, the longest bridge in Finland is being built, pictured here. and it's actually only going to be in use for trams and pedestrians and bicyclists. So no cars are allowed on this bridge, which allows us to build the connectivity not only for Kalasatama but Kruununvuoren Ranta, which was even further out from the city center. It will be about 15 minutes from downtown with a tram, with no risk of congestion from personal vehicles. What's the sort of the overall aim of all these actions is the strategy that's been put in place for Kalasatama is to offer residents of this area 1 more hour a day by making sure that they don't have to spend that hour either in traffic or using public services in a way that wastes their time. So the easy access of things like schools and healthcare clinics, but then also more mundane things like waste management that's done through vacuum tube systems enables people to reduce the time that's spent there, plus reduce congestion, given that waste trucks don't have to drive around the district, but they can all collect the waste from one central location. This was a sort of a quick highlight of some of the initiatives that we've done building the new areas in Helsinki. I hope you find inspiration from them in Brampton, and wish you all the best in your development projects in the Greater Toronto area. Thank you.
Yanni, this is Ken Greenberg, and thank you so much for that. Your example in Helsinki truly has been an inspiration for us. There's so many things we'd like to ask you, but I just have 2 questions that hopefully you can expand on for a minute or 2. One is, what is the difference this has really meant to people's lives who are living in this 25-hour city, 25-hour neighborhood, and how important has it been to get the social infrastructure, the schools and the other elements in early?
So from talking with people who live in that area, it's really been successful in what, like as it was said on the title page, to expand the urban core. Particularly European cities are known for having that urban, sort of dense urban area where you have the services and you can like sort of live your life within walking distance. And it looks like we've been successful in doing that, even in a modern neighborhood that's been built only in the last few years. It sort of comes through from the possibility of being able to kind of stay within the area where you live and take care of all both your sort of public service needs as well as private service needs in that same area. Of course, new areas typically tend to attract particularly younger people and young families. And for them to have schools and kindergartens at a walking distance is almost a must to move into an area like this. We weren't 100% successful, to be honest. There was the first residents moved in just before the school and the kindergarten were finished, and even that sort of a gap of a few months' time created a lot of complaints and ruckus about the fact that they had to sort of move around and take their kids elsewhere. But that got fixed fairly soon. So it's not an issue if the delay isn't a matter of multiple years.
Thank you so much, Yanni, for sharing this experience with us.
My pleasure.
Hi, Yanni, it is Yvonne here. I have a quick question for you. I remember last time when you come and share the Helsinki experience with us, you have talked about Helsinki also has went through the shift from a car-oriented environment to a much more transit-oriented culture. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I could elaborate quite a bit on it too, but essentially there was a plan in the 60s to convert the city center of Helsinki into the kind of typical North American city center where you have highways coming all the way to the city center, the city center being surrounded by highways. And at that point, the realization was made that that's not the way that the politicians wanted the city to look like in the future. And that's when the decision was made to maintain the tram line, to start building a metro line. And we're sort of benefiting from that decision now. There were smaller things that were done to help car transportation, which we're still suffering from. But really, the sort of the main decision at the time to focus on public transport, which we're now increasingly doing, of the top 10 main investment projects that the city is doing at the moment, they're basically all around public transport rather than car transport. So hopefully, in a few decades' time, we'll be in a better position from that perspective in Helsinki.
Hi, Yanni. This is a really great learning experience for us. So knowing that a city is not built in one day, and so does Kala Satama, can you walk us through some of the placemaking strategies? How do you make life bearable during this transitional period as the community is getting built out?
Yeah, that's a very important point. In addition to having the public services available, you really need to start right from the beginning to have things for people to do, or things for people to feel like they're living in a place and not a construction site. So this last picture actually on my presentation talks a little bit about that. To build the plan is to build a kind of a beach area without sand in the Kalasatama area, which would be a place for people to congregate, and it's on the side, but so it doesn't sort of obstruct the construction that is still going on, but it immediately gives people a place to come to, even from outside of the district. So that's also important, that the district starts building a character from the beginning. So it's not a kind of a sleeping suburb, but there are reasons for people to come there also from afar.
Thank you, Yanni, for this very inspiring presentation. And on behalf of City of Brampton and Urban Land Institute, thank you for participating on this event again. And we look forward to further collaboration and further sharing of best practices in the coming years.
Thank you for inviting me, Yvonne, and absolutely looking forward to continuing to collaborate and looking forward to seeing the development that will be taking place in Brampton in the coming years.
That was fantastic. Really, really interesting inspiration coming from the city of Helsinki, with a lot of interesting parallels. I think that transit-only bridge or a non-car bridge as the key connection to this community, to the center city, is just so bold, and it really does have some great parallels to the infrastructure that's going to enable the community that we're talking about tonight. Moving along, I'm going to just say one thing to the panel that's going to follow. Jonathan Gitlin, who's the President and Chief Operating Officer of RioCan REIT, one of the aforementioned 7, I think, developers who are aligning their visions with the city to bring this vision to light. I would ask that the panelists have a look at the Q&A if you haven't already, particularly to Richard, who's going to be Richard Forward, who's going to be the moderator, because perhaps some of those questions are things you could look at in your own remarks at the final panel before we go to the Q&A proper. So with that, we also have Jonathan who's coming in by tape. His colleague will be live on the panel, though, shortly thereafter.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining at this great event today put on by ULI. It's an honor to be here. My name is Jonathan Gitlin, President and Chief Operating Officer of RioCan REIT, and I wanted to talk about RioCan's vision for transit-oriented mixed-use properties, and that is our fundamental vision for our future. But of course, we can't do this alone. We are blessed to have some very well-located properties, but those properties without some really solid infrastructure and transit that is provided by various governmental, provincial, and otherwise stakeholders are just not as worthwhile as they would be without that. So we are really enabled in our objective to get a lot of transit-oriented mixed-use properties within our portfolio has really been aided and supported by a lot of provincial investment in infrastructure. And a great example of that is the Hurontario LRT line. Now that line is about 18 kilometers long, and it's a Metrolinx project that will really link Brampton to Mississauga and connect the GO Transit and regional bus lines. This will expand operations of GO services, which are very important, and it shows municipal investments in the Zoom bus rapid transit service, which is equally important. So right now, the Brampton terminus for this LRT line is slated for RioCan's property called Shoppers World Brampton, and this is going to be known as the Gateway Terminal. A very important and tremendous opportunity for RioCan and the community to bring that property, Shoppers World Brampton, to its highest and best use with integrated retail, office, residential, and parks and other very important needs by transforming this very historic property into something that is more, I think, fitting for the community. And RioCan really does take pride in a substantial amount of community engagement. It's something that we incorporate into all of our development projects, and we spend a lot of time and energy coordinating with the various stakeholders within these communities to ensure that whatever we curate is done so in lockstep with the desires of that community. So as part of the development process for Shoppers World Brampton, we, RioCan, participated in an invitation-only ULI virtual workshop to discuss transit-oriented communities and really the role of the public, private, and nonprofit partners to meet the challenges that we face today to create successful transit-oriented communities. And we're very pleased with the outcome. And that leads me to talk a little bit more in detail about Shoppers World Brampton. So the Shoppers World Brampton site is envisioned to be really an integrated, mixed-use, and very thoughtfully designed community. It's an anchored development in what we consider the redevelopment of the entire Uptown Brampton area. It's a new community, and it's going to be phased over time. It's very sizable, and it's going to be organized around an active and transit-oriented mobility framework, which we think is critical for a community of this nature. We've received a significant amount of feedback from the community and the city, and they've really informed this concept, and it's really been something that we've been working on for at least the last 2 years. So it's a culmination of a lot of effort from a lot of different stakeholders. And what we've come up with is something that is very pedestrian focused. It's a dense urban neighborhood. It's got a mix of high-rise and mid-rise and stacked townhomes, but it's also integrated. There's a lot more to it than just the residential component. We want to bring life to the community. We're going to have a grid of 4 proposed public streets. They're going to be lined with modern-looking buildings and integrated into a large public realm. And I think that the fact that we're going to move parking underground, have street infrastructure that will really support multi-uses with from cyclists to pedestrians. There'll be connections to park and trail infrastructure surrounding the site. And we think this will be a critical component to serve the broader community, but also the 5,000 residential units and the residents within those units, which will be a mix of rental and condo. We're going to have a wide variety of tenants, special focus on what we consider a high street type of feel, which will take an approach that really develops a complementary mix of tenants that serve the local demographics. So there's going to be open spaces, public plazas, and a lot of parks with a lot of very wide pedestrian sidewalks, which again, we think will be a very fundamental part of making this a community hub. There's also going to be a 7.5-acre space, speaking of community hubs, that will serve as a public amenity for the Shoppers World Brampton residents, tenants, businesses, and for all of the upcoming developments that we plan that should be around the Steeles and Main Street site. So how has the city and the province really enabled us to do this? Well, there's been a lot of discussion with key stakeholders. There's been a lot of investment in infrastructure by the province, which we're grateful for. But the City of Brampton has really had a forward-looking view on this, and they've taken a significant investment, or made a significant investment in coming up with this vision for the city. They've done it through studies to produce this vision, but they've also done it through a lot of collaborative work with us and various other stakeholders, including city councillors, the region of Peel, the residents in the area, and developers like ourselves. And this will ultimately conclude in a cross-functional, excellent development that we think will be very beneficial for the community. And this really was a great example of a collaborative approach that really does allow us to efficiently and effectively design this project to meet the needs of the community and the City of Brampton. So we're thrilled to be a part of it, and we're thrilled to be a part of ULI and being able to present to you today. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it as always. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jonathan. And we're now into the home stretch. We have a final panel of some key players, both within the municipality and on the private sector side, as well as community, which is going to be led by one of Bob Berkey's, excuse me, Bob, I just very much butchered your last name, Director of Policy and Planning at the City of Brampton, who's going to introduce our moderator and pronounce his name for me. Let's see if we can, I'm going to ask that we conclude this panel by 8:15, and then we are going to extend the program by 15 minutes to 8:45 to allow for a few more questions than we otherwise could accommodate from all of you in the community audience. So Bob, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Richard, and I'm happy to hear.
I think we're having an audio issue.
My apologies.
Yes, we're good now.
I'm back. Okay, great. Well, I wanted to just say a couple of words, and then we'll get right into the next phase here with the panel. So I want to say that the Brampton 20.
You're good, Bob.
I'm good. Okay.
You're good.
The Brampton 2040 vision, Living the Mosaic, is really a bold new plan for the future of Brampton. And it's really key to what we're doing here. From its global recognition as a smart city focused on citizens, to our emerging cultural scene, focusing our immense creative talents. There's a lot of great things happening in Brampton. Implementing the 2040 vision for Uptown is a perfect example of collaboration, and it's really a wonderful opportunity to bring all the pieces together and transform the Shoppers World area into a walkable, friendly, complete neighborhood. We're always challenged in the work we do to think bigger and work differently in how we build our cities, and that's exactly what's happening in Brampton right now. One thing is the Brampton 2040 vision was launched well before COVID-19 inserted its way into our lives. And the concepts put forth are even more relevant today because of it. It's a really key aspect for us recovering from and living with the challenges that are coming up, as we've heard tonight. City planning and design focuses on solving big questions, and Uptown is a really big question. And thankfully, we have many of the answers, and we know we also have a great public and private suite of partners, engaged citizens, active business owners, and talented professionals eager to get the job done. I also really want to thank everyone who's joining us today, and I'd certainly encourage you to continue to be involved and contribute to how we get from where we are now to where we all want to be. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Brampton's Commissioner of Planning, Building and Economic Development, Richard Ford, who will introduce our panel. And I'll just say, Richard has a passion, a real passion that's absolutely evident from working with him for city building. And he is one of the driving forces guiding Brampton through our expansion and intensification programs as Brampton does shift to the new reality and as we're really working on implementing the 2040 vision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Richard and look forward to hearing the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Bob. That's very kind of you. So good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be moderating this panel tonight. I'm excited by the opportunity to share with you a collaborative model that can help guide your community building initiatives. Each member of the panel brings a unique perspective, but with a common theme of collaboration and alignment in community building. We are building on the momentum of Brampton's Vision 2040 through this process of implementation. So with us tonight, we have Claire Barnett, Director of Economic Development with the City of Brampton. Claire brings a unique perspective to Brampton with her private and public sector experience in economic development, attracting foreign direct investment, communications, and place branding and marketing. We also have Andrew Duncan, Senior Vice President of Development with RioCan. Andrew is responsible for the initial assessment of all prospective sites, leading negotiations with vendors, and has direct oversight for all facets of site planning, including working in the land development industry for almost 20 years. Dr. Lawrence Lowe, Medical Officer of Health, Public Health.
Richard, you might just
25th.
Your microphone. Just mic. I'm not sure if there's a mic issue, but there's a bit of an audio issue. If you're able to.
Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry to interrupt you. Yes, we can now. We can now.
Okay. So we also have Dr. Lawrence Lowe, who's the Medical Officer of Health for Peel Public Health. And he was previously an Associate Medical Officer of Health and served as an Interim Medical Officer of Health in Peel. Dr. Lowe is an adjunct professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health, University of Toronto. Dave Capel, Chair, New Brampton. Dave is a co-founder, Chair of New Brampton, and Dave is the CEO of Capel Holdings and Capel Financial Services. He is a builder of the community at heart. Dave has been involved in revitalizing many Brampton historic buildings and recognizes the true potential of this city. Michelle McCollum, Associate Vice President, Capital Development and Facilities with Sheridan College. She leads all aspects of Sheridan's built environment, including sustainability, land use, infrastructure planning, new construction, renovations, and facility management. As a public sector leader, she has over 25 years in municipal government and education administration in the UK and Canada, driving key strategic initiatives. So, welcome to the panel, and let's start it off with Dr. Lowe. I want to start with you as Peel Region's Medical Officer of Health. Given the current state of COVID-19, and in particular with the existing state of health of our residents in Brampton, what do you see as the benefits in general with designing and building walkable, mixed-use, transit-oriented communities? And in particular, how will this approach to a health mindset benefit Shoppers World project?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and on the panel and to kick it off. And certainly health is at the center, I would say, of any sort of mixed-use transit-oriented development. We know that any walk to and from a bus or a light rail, it all starts with a walk. And one of the most important things that we can do to lower rates of chronic disease, promote better air quality, which reduces respiratory illnesses, is certainly reducing injuries, and also improving mental health is to really reduce car usage and a dependence on the car, and more to encourage active transport, so walking, cycling, and taking public transport. Ironically, it actually, even in the context of COVID-19, helps to build a more resilient community as well, because we know that more physically active people, more people who have access to greater social cohesion, greater communities, they tend to have better health outcomes and lower rates of chronic disease. And we've all seen, especially in the midst of the pandemic, how individuals who do have chronic disease are at higher risk of more severe outcomes. So overall, it's really exciting to see a lot of the plans that have been proposed for Shoppers World and for Uptown Brampton, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what the rest of the panelists have to say tonight as I bring my perspective on health.
Great, Richard, just a quick audio check. That Dr. Lawrence's, Dr. Lowe's rather's audio was a little low, so we heard you, but if people could just make sure that they're speaking close to their mics so that we can catch every word.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Richard. Thank you. Thank you. So, Andrew, you're with RioCan. So, can you tell us why you decided to invest in Brampton? RioCan has many assets across Canada. What were the key drivers for embarking on this 20-year plan that will transform how community building is implemented in North America?
Hi, Richard. Thanks for your question. First, let me thank the City of Brampton and ULI for convening such a phenomenal event. The answer to your question is quite simple. Our priority, as Jonathan said in his remarks, is focusing on our assets that are that provide opportunities for transit-oriented development. Shoppers of Brampton is one of our great assets now, but has tremendous opportunity and an ability to be something great in the future. I think one of the key reasons we've chosen to embark on this process with the city and the province is to, based on the investment the province has made in infrastructure in terms of transit, and based on the forward thinking and design that the city's undertaken in terms of their 2040 vision. As an owner and a developer, when we see a municipality come forward and want to have vision in terms of the future on one of our sites that provide an opportunity to provide the community things they need, our shareholders things they need, to create a complete community with a variety of uses, we're always engaged.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew, for that. And so we have a local businessman that's on the line, Dave Capel. You're a long-term businessman in Brampton, chair of the new Brampton Group, advocating for change. You were also instrumental in driving the 2040 vision for Brampton. From your perspective, what are the opportunities that exist with creating a collaborative model and shaping Brampton's future? Not sure if David.
Yeah, David. Dave, sorry, you're on mute. There we go.
Are we okay now? Yeah, sorry about that. Well, no, this is music to our ears, quite frankly, for New Brampton and folks who are passionate about the City of Brampton, because this is what Brampton has been wanting for the last 20, 30 years. We've been a sprawl, and certainly this has completely gone the other way. And this is what the 2040 vision was all about. And we've been a believer of city operating with a vision, and this is the first time in a long time city is working with a vision. So when you're doing what you're doing over here is going to be attractive, very, very attractive for developers to come and invest their money like RioCan is doing, and various other developers, along with businesses and large organizations who want to make Brampton their home. Brampton has a history of having a low tax ratio between businesses and residents, and this is very important to turn that around, where you have businesses paying more taxes towards the city coffers as compared to residences paying more. And I think it works with the council's vision, to keep the taxes low. So this is amazing. What you guys are doing is amazing. The 20, is healthy. It's 20-minute walk. It's just absolutely amazing.
That's great. Thank you, Dave, for that. And so I want to move to Michelle. So Michelle, you're leading the charge in terms of Sheridan's campus, and which we know is 50 years young, and it's about 100 acres site within Brampton, close to Shoppers World. So can you just tell us how the implementation of Vision 2040 through the Shoppers World project is informing your vision for Sheridan's campus?
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard, for the great question. So, we've recognised for some time, Sheridan, as you know, as you said, Richard, is about 50 years old. Our first building on our Davis campus was constructed around 1970. At that time, the community around us looked very different than it looked today. So the community has really developed and grown around us, and Sheridan has really developed and grown as an institution, really underpinned by innovation and creativity in everything that we do. So it was time to actually think about that and think about how our campus really reflected that, and also how we engage with the broader community. Very inwardly focused. You drive past our campus and you're met with an ocean of parking lot. So we were thinking about how we change that. So we're so excited that our board unanimously approved our campus master plan. But that master plan thinks about how we re-engage with the community, but it also thinks about how Sheridan takes its place as a city builder, a community builder in a broader ecosystem. So, we've been engaging with RioCan, for example. We've been talking about sustainability and infrastructure like district energy, which we have on our campus. And so I think that's the exciting part, I think for us all, is the level of engagement. It feels like the stars are aligning. It feels like we're coming together, and it's an opportunity for us all to think about our place in the broader ecosystem and how we create the conversations that actually really help us to trailblaze and move this forward.
Oh, that's great, Michelle. Thank you for that. And I want to move now to our Director of Economic Development in Brampton, Claire. It's really a two-part question. So as a director in Brampton for economic development, how do you see this 20-year plan, which we know is a 20-year plan for Shoppers World, unfolding in terms of business retention? And how will the innovation district that council is investing significantly in the downtown help to leverage the economic development potential of Shoppers World site?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to participate on this panel. Appreciate the questions, Richard. And I would caveat my comments that the impact of COVID on economic development, we obviously don't know, but we really do think that this is an excellent opportunity, an exciting initiative for us to really have a phased approach when it comes to economic development, where transit is obviously very, very critical for bringing talent to this area. And so, as you mentioned, we really hope to have an extension of the innovation district, focusing on entrepreneurship from downtown to this area, focusing on small business. Certainly, we hope to bring the entrepreneurship center to the community hub that's been spoken about. And we'd really like to try and focus on areas of the economy that have been impacted by COVID. So for example, an entrepreneur center for women, perhaps, if there's a daycare center at the community hub, that would probably be very helpful. We'd also like to work with Sheridan very closely when it comes to entrepreneurship, working with Michelle's colleagues already on things like clean manufacturing or small scale manufacturing, that we could work with entrepreneurs to do that. Equally as important would be working with the existing businesses. And I saw some questions in the QA in the chat section about how would we work with the small businesses that are already at Shoppers World. And so we would want to ensure that another phase of our work would be to work with the existing businesses to help retain them, to help expand them, certainly to provide opportunities for small businesses. And then eventually we would be looking at investment attraction. And we've already been told by site selectors that we've shared the 2040 vision with, and we've shared the vision of this area with, that this is very interesting to them. And it is definitely an initiative that they want us to keep them informed about. And so throughout all of these stages, what is the most important thing is that we offer highly skilled talent and a talented workforce for any of that work, and especially as we start out with the innovation district. And so that comes with transit, and that comes with bringing people from across the GTA to this area, but also for the community in this area. So I'll leave it at that.
No, that's great, Claire. Thank you for that. And I think it's really critical for that we understand that. So I've got a question from Chris Drew, who's on the chat, and I'll throw this out to the panel, and then anyone can respond to it. But Chris is asking, how important will it be to have a convenient walking connections for transit riders transferring between the Hurontario LRT and Brampton Transit bus routes, including existing and future Zoom routes? And what do panel members think this connection should look like for that area? Does anybody want to just respond to that?
I can maybe start us off if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
It's very, very front of mind for Sheridan. You know, our location at Steeles and McLaughlin, we're really thinking about that connection to the LRT. Of course, safety is of paramount importance. You know, we recently surveyed our students to understand more about ridership, and over 50% of our students do either take public transit or walk or cycle you know, to Sheridan. We know that increased dramatically when we saw the development of bus rapid transit on Steeles, and so our expectation is that will continue to increase. So the safe connection of the different modes of public transit are absolutely imperative, and also the safe connection to within these kind of cluster of communities that we're creating. You know, the connection right now, I share with you, I had my Wellington boots on and trudging through all of the trail system a few weeks ago just to understand it better. And there's some real serious complexities there. There's some really significant infrastructure investment that needs to make that happen. And so that needs different levels of government to recognise that that investment is required for safety, to allow all members of the community to have really nice ways to connect to these different communities, because right now, and I think the video at the beginning really showed that, students talking about being on Steeles Avenue is not going to help. It's not going to be something that is going to make all of this work. So the connectivity between these communities and the safe passage from the different versions of transit that we'll see are imperative.
I'd like to add to what Michelle is saying. I agree with what she's saying, and I think it's imperative to have that connection to the downtown part for two reasons. When you're expecting large employers to come there, one of the first things they look at is to have easy transit for their employees. And having a connection to downtown, a rapid connection, which is very easily to be able to go back and forth between uptown and downtown, becomes paramount. Not only that, you want to make sure that the all-day two-way go or rapid transit or airport to connection, connection to the airport, these things are all set up in place as well, or at least we are working on it, because then this becomes a true center, and it not only becomes uptown, it also, I think, somewhat, it may even join downtown and uptown together, which can be very powerful. Although, because uptown on its own can't be living on an island, it needs to be mixed. And I think so the transit becomes extremely crucial. So even if later on you have an LRT, which I think it's on a study at the moment, but until that comes in, transit can, I'm sure, take care of the, like our bus transit can handle that part very easily, connection between downtown and that. And cities, I think at the moment, is looking at a proper terminal in downtown Brampton anyway. So that just works very, very nicely with the whole thing.
Could I just add very quickly to Michelle and David's comments, from a health behavior perspective, the easier you make it for someone to do something, the more likely they'll do it. So if you're putting the accessibility in, if you're putting clear guiding pathways, if you're making it comfortable for people to wait for transit, and then also most importantly, if you're timing the routes to ensure that people aren't dwelling too long at the place, then it makes it more likely that people will engage in the healthier form of commuting.
That's great. And so I've got another comment from one of our members on the chat, from Assam Berry. And this is going to be directed to you, Dr. Lowe. But so it says, COVID is not a permanent situation, and there is no link with mass transit for an outbreak if managed properly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think in general, I think we all agree that COVID is not a permanent situation. I really hope it isn't, just given how much I've been working lately. But I think it really is important to plan for a future where we do know that some of the leading health issues that we have in Canada are physical activity, chronic disease, and also mental health issues, which we do know are exacerbated by single-use, car-dependent suburbs. So I think taking the step to really build a mixed-use community in the manner that's involved will have a great payout for physical and mental well-being, really encouraging community cohesiveness, and also the opportunity for people to live their lives in a different way than was traditionally put forward.
Thank you for that, Dr. Lowe. And I want to come back to Andrew, because in the beginning, I noted that each of the panelists brings a unique perspective to community building. And so for those municipalities, Andrew, on the call, what would you recommend that they do to start on this path to community building?
Thanks for the great question, Richard. I think a lot of examples Brampton set are ones that other municipalities can look to. Again, going back to the ability to have some vision and put a plan together that takes stakeholder input in terms of how it's developed, encourages investment from a development standpoint, and sets clear goals in terms of what they want to see in the future, provides a signal to developers that they want to be open for business and want developers to come and reimagine what they want to do in those environments. Finally, municipalities continue to encourage connectivity with other municipalities and providing more transit and more infrastructure that help support private developers like us, our investment in those municipalities. So I think lastly, encouraging collaboration. I think, a lot of municipalities are becoming more forward thinking about not just creating policy in a vacuum, about trying to get input from the community at large, and trying to figure out exactly what those communities need and want in the future, and trying to make sure there's an intersection between what those communities need and want and what developers can provide, so that it's a win for all stakeholders involved.
Oh, thank you for that, Andrew. And I have to ask this question because, the elephant in the room obviously is COVID-19. Has that changed your plans, RioCan's plans, in terms of what you were looking to build?
I don't think, as we've said already, I don't think any of us believe COVID is a long-term situation, and we all sincerely hope it's not. Has COVID changed our plans? No, we still believe in Brampton. We still believe in this site, as evidenced by the ongoing work we're doing with the city even now in terms of our rezoning application. And we look forward to putting our next levels of applications in. I think COVID changes in short term, the amount of investment people make and how quickly they make investment. But we have a long-term view for this site. We're an owner on this site. We believe in it now. We believe in it in the next 5 years and the next 10 years. And we believe in seeing the vision the city's put together in collaboration with the stakeholders to come to fruition.
No, that's great, Andrew, and thank you for that. And we're definitely in the implementation phase of Vision 2040. So Claire, as the Director of Economic Development, and you've been involved obviously with the strategy that we've been moving forward with. How do you see, this is a massive project. It's a 20-year project. How do you see the components of small businesses and keeping those things active as we move through this project?
That's a really very good question, because it is such a long project. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to have to be a phased approach. We're going to have to start with much of the businesses that are already there, and what the community wants to see from those businesses. One of the videos that we saw talked about, the implementation of a high street with wide sidewalks, and a lot of the questions in the Q&A was about preserving much of what is there already. What's going to happen to the small businesses that are there? So I think that's where we would start. We would start with what is already there, what do people want to continue to have, and what is missing. And as that community evolves, that is where you see the organic change happen. And economic development isn't there to lead the way, but to really help that community develop its economy as it wants to see.
Oh, that's great. And so I want to bring Dave into the conversation, because Dave, you're a long-term business person in Brampton, and you've been very, very active with the new Brampton Group. How do you see these events unfolding in terms of Shoppers World, and what do you see as the opportunities here for small business folks in Brampton?
The matter of fact for Brampton, I'm going to just go back a little bit, and I'll come to your question as well. One of the biggest issue folks in New Brampton and folks like us have been having in Brampton is that city property taxes have been shooting up, and our council and our mayor wants to freeze the taxes and lower them. What you guys are doing here is putting us at ease. The fear we had was, if the sprawl continues for Brampton, you are going to have a major tax issues for the city, because it's very expensive to maintain the roads along faraway streets and so on, rec centers and all that. When we are coming back in and building it back inwards, now that relieves pressure from taxes. So, to me, if city had not taken these steps and didn't have the 2040 vision, we were looking at some major problems 10, 15 years down the road. And, you know, to the point I could even go and say, well, you know, city could go broke one day. But this, what you're doing over here, the council and the mayor and the county development and Richard, you and your team, like it's very impressive. And you know, and you can see that developers are very keen on it. So these are very good signs of everything coming together. So if these 20-minute neighborhoods starts to pop up everywhere and are planned and designed properly, that will bring the population inwards. Right now, you have everybody traveling from Brampton to Toronto to Guelph or wherever they work, and it's a bedroom community. Certainly, you're turning it around into a major city, and if it's a planned city, that just changes. It becomes beautiful.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. We're now in the implementation phase. So I want to bring Dr. Lowe back into the conversation. I know we've only got, I think, 1 minute to go, if that. But Dr. Lowe, what do you see? Like basically with this mixed-use development, transit-oriented development, do you see that as future-proofing our neighborhoods for a future pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, you know, besides the fact that it encourages, as I've mentioned, a healthier baseline status, it really forestalling a lot of chronic disease. It really has been demonstrated in health promotion literature that connection and social community cohesiveness is one of the most critical things that actually promotes well-being, both mentally and physically. I think we've all seen that, especially with the challenges of our current situation with physical distancing, etc. And I think that's where we've actually seen certain compact, denser urban forms have actually perhaps had a certain resilience built in, because you already have those established connections. You're able to, you know, walk across the street and, you know, check in with your neighbor at 2 meters, as opposed to having to make your way out and drive through the suburbs. And you're able to, you know, everyone, you know, in terms of who's at the shop, who's at the various services you access. So it makes it a lot easier. It makes it, and it also builds a sense of community so that people can get through things together.
That's great. And so I want to thank the panelists. I know that Richard, that you want to keep us on track, and I want to really thank all the panelists for their thoughts today and contributing to this narrative. So thank you.
Well, we're going to ask two things. Ask the panelists to hang on, of course. And Richard, you've done an amazing job. In fact, I'm going to ask, if you don't mind hanging on as well, why don't we tag team our way through some of these questions, sure, Richard? And I'll also invite Councillor Medeiros and Vicente to join us, as well as Ken and Yvonne. As questions come, you might want to weigh in on some of these answers as well. So we've got about half an hour, a little less than that, to get through some of these great questions. So I'm going to mostly, sort of go democratically through the questions as they've been voted. So you can continue to go in and upvote questions you see, and note that there's a lot of new ones at the bottom that you might not have seen and therefore haven't got as many votes. So have a look. We'll pick a few, cherry pick as well. So we'll do a bit of both, Richard. The first one, I'm going to ask the first two, because I think they kind of both are somewhat related. But the first one is from Hayden Poon, who asked, when will the Hurontario LRT connect with the Brampton GO station? I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that, but it's a good question. It needs to connect to the Kitchener GO line, he's arguing. And the other question that goes the other direction from Sylvia is, where is the focus on the Steeles BRT? It connects 2 LRTs, 2 colleges, 1 university, and 2 GO stations on different GO lines, and 3 major cities, Brampton, Mississauga, and Toronto. Traffic in Uptown is going to come from east and west on Steeles, not from the 4 corners. So I'll throw that out.
Yeah, so let me start, Richard, and I know that Bob Bjork is on the line as well. And the good news is that CN is doing a study to expand their rail, which will allow for 2-way all-day GO from Union Station. So that's the good news. And so I think Bob can, update us in terms of the components of the various pieces we talked about.
Bob, you might be on mute.
Oh, yeah, so there we go. Hey, everyone, so, all right, I'm going to start my video. Hi, everyone. Yes, so I mean, in terms of the timing for the expansion for 2-way all-day GO, I mean, that's coming up relatively soon in the next 4 or 5 years. I think we're going to start to see construction and that complete. Now, I think they're also looking for the connection from here up through. So we are also doing a study for the city has a study underway for the LRT line up from Hurontario or along Hurontario up to the GO station. The timing for that, I think, is subject to funding and sort of final determination there, and that's a larger discussion. But I think it's absolutely pertinent that making that connection. I think, as Dave and others have emphasized, that connection is a really key one. And in the interim, there's the Zoom service. There are other things. BRT will pick up the gap to some extent, but that long-term connection is really important.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Maybe that's it. Go ahead.
I wouldn't mind adding something, but I'm sure Councillor Vicente would like to say something as well. I can see his body language, and he loves talking about this. So I think LRT north-south, it's going to come to fruition. It's a matter of time which way. That's all it is, and the funding is available. It'll be there. So I'm not concerned from that angle. Which way it goes, it doesn't really matter. As at the end of the day, if it connects, we are good. What's important is also what's also crucial is the connection to Toronto. So you have your GO and the airport connection. Those are going to be the game changers for the city, along with this, because once we have those east-west connections, and all the way Guelph and over here, and connected to the airport somehow, because I believe there is provinces looking at some things with respect to airport connection to Brampton. I think we should focus a little bit more on that. And if we did that, I think it will become a huge asset.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I think the only thing that I would add to say is that all the connections are important to the city of Brampton. We're looking for north-south, we're looking for east-west, and we're also looking into Toronto for that frequency that the residents here of the city of Brampton expect and deserve. And so council is working very hard along with staff to make sure that all of these plans come to fruition. We know that the province is working on the all-day two-way GO question. And in the meantime, as Dave mentioned, and Bob also spoke to the point that council has made a decision that the Main Street corridor is in fact the route that we prefer for the completion of the northern extension of the LRT. And staff are working on 3 options that council selected, and they are completing those EAs. And when the EAs are finished, then we can move on to the next stage, whether it's design. But in the meantime, council works at every meeting of AMO, every meeting at FCM, to ask the federal and provincial governments to be partners with us and to help us fund these projects.
That's great. And so we've got another question on the chat from Rick Evans, and it's, how do you respond to criticisms that this vision of Uptown with LRT ending at Steeles is creating a new bedroom community designed to feed the employment, education, and entertainment services provided in Mississauga, not the growth of employment and education opportunities in Brampton? So I'm not sure if, Bob, you want to just jump in on that one. And then maybe Dave, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that as well.
Well, so really quickly, and I'd invite sort of any of the other panelists we have here to join in as well. But for us, it's absolutely critical we have that mix of employment and services as well as housing. I mean, housing isn't the only thing we're looking to see developed. And as we've talked about here tonight, I mean, what's critical to that success, being a successful community, is it being a complete community. So having employment, so local employment as well as significant other kinds of employment that'll come over time. And of course, there'll be some people who do take advantage of things that are outside the municipality. But the intent is to really make this a key hub that has those links to Sheridan, that has the strong link to the downtown, and really is a place that represents Brampton as a gateway. So we're not going to keep people from going to and from Brampton, but we're going to have enough there, I think, to bring people into the city proper and really support that as a full and complete community.
Thanks for that, Bob. And we have another question, which I think is a really good one here. So it says, amazing presentation and great panel. So thanks to all the panel members. Are there plans to convert residential low density neighborhoods into higher density? And in doing so, any help to the private sector to stitch together smaller parcels of land to make a larger viable size plot for mixed use? And I think this is a good question because Brampton is changing, and it's a realization that density and height are critical components of community building. And I'm not sure who on the panel wants to speak to this one. Maybe Bob, you can kick it off, and hopefully others can join in.
Sure, and I think, as you say, I mean, Brampton is changing in some ways very, very quickly, and will continue to change as some of these investments are made. I think it's going to happen a lot faster than people see. We haven't looked to prompt that consolidation. I think that's been something the private sector has done as an opportunity basis, and then we've looked for where those things can fit in well to kind of represent those changes with the higher density and the also being sensitive to the design. So ultimately, we've got something that fits with the services that are offered and a grade represents something attractive for people, useful, and coincides with the services that we've really talked about tonight. So all of those pieces coming together. But as you say, Richard, and I think as others here, I mean, that density is coming, and we're certainly supporting that transition and making sure that we've got a good way to integrate that into the designs for the city. But yeah, I'd certainly invite others who've spoken tonight to give their thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to add, if I can.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you first.
Okay. I always talk about this example. On George Street, we have my office is George Street, and across the street used to be a small, tiny building years ago, and which today is 300 stories, 300 unit apartment building. It used to collect about $10,000 a year in tax. Today it's collecting about $1 million a year in tax. That's the answer. So when you're saying, we should join small lots together and bring that in, that's a win-win for the city and the taxpayer. It's just win-win for everybody. So this route makes complete sense because, you have 300 units paying on the same land. The city basically has very similar infrastructure in place. They didn't have to develop any new streets. They didn't have to develop any new water lines. They didn't have to do very much. And yet they increased their revenue to $1 million from 10,000. So yes, to me, I would strongly recommend, and I think you guys are thinking those lines to begin with. I think, where you want to combine small lots and make into larger buildings, and that's required.
So Councillor Vicente, I know you wanted to have a jump in on it, and absolutely intensification and minimizing infrastructure cost, they go hand in hand. So Councillor Vicente.
Yeah, I would just like to echo the idea that we want to find all of the different ways that we can to do infill projects. And wherever there is a piece of land or two or three, where a developer or an individual organization can find a way of producing a better, more efficient, more pleasing way for someone to live within the city of Brampton, whether it's connected to transit or connected to different amenities. This council has demonstrated through its past decisions that it is very much in favor of those types of projects. And, to the question and the way it was asked, it's about repairing the sprawl. We have a city that predominantly has sprawled outwards for decades. And wherever it is that we can intensify and find little pockets to build interesting little projects that more and more people can live in, projects that are exciting, affordable, and that don't necessarily depend on the use of a vehicle to get to and from. That for us is really key.
Richard, this is Ken. Maybe I can just add another thought there. The development is one thing, and I absolutely think what Councillor Vicente is describing is something that will happen and should happen. But I think as you do that, making those single family neighborhoods work better in terms of cycling, walking, public spaces, community amenities, things like corner stores that we used to have historically in neighborhoods where people can do some local shopping. The idea of the social infrastructure that we're talking about in the community hub, not necessarily relying on mega facilities that are extremely far apart with big parking lots that people have to drive to, but I can see Dr. Lowe nodding, dispersing some of that infrastructure throughout the city. And so I think we shouldn't think of what's happening around Shoppers World as this unique, isolated exception, but really pointing the way to a different way of doing development.
Yeah, that's great, Ken. Thank you for that. And I want to bring Andrew back into the conversation because I think it's really important for other communities that are in on the call to understand why RioCan is doing what it's doing in Brampton. I think it's really important, Andrew, if you could just share what other communities can learn from this event.
It's a great question, Richard. I think at the end of the day, we're a large real estate investment trust. We have 200 some properties across Canada. So it's our responsibility to our shareholders to look at those properties and try to provide them with the opportunity to benefit from the highest and best use. And that requires partnership. It requires us to look through our portfolio and identify opportunities. And those opportunities are governed by investment in infrastructure, by, all levels of government, and a willingness to work with us to see a new vision on those properties. I think some of the comments that Ken made and Dave's made about, encouraging developers and encouraging responsible development are both very interesting in the fact that, if a city's open to looking at reimagining spaces and they're open to potentials for increased density, which allows the investment in providing other community amenities along with the density of developers trying to monetize, provides an intersection of desires, right? So, and to Ken's point, we've got I think the other important part even about Shoppersville Brampton we have to remember is we've got a 20-year vision here. And there's multiple things that are hard about this that are very exciting is that, putting a vision out there and setting a target that everyone's aligned to is the first task. The next task is making sure that each step along that way can be successful, because as soon as it's not, it fails. So I think, understanding and working with the city and the stakeholders to understand what each one of these phases of redevelopment, not only in our site, but in Brampton mean, and how they can be successful at each individual stage, it'll be critical to continue the communication and continue the collaboration that we've seen to date.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, Andrew, and appreciate that. And we also have 3 levels of government that are also on the call. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that we want to be able to bring the facilities in before the residents actually show up and before the kids, show up and, they graduate and they go off to university and they still haven't got a high school or a community center built within the community. And so I think this is really transforming how the local government, how the provincial government, and how the federal government will cooperate and collaborate and align. And that's been the message, I think, from the beginning, collaboration and alignment, and it's really critical. So Richard, I'm not sure, do we have any more time left?
You're on mute.
I can't believe I did that. All right. Yes, we do. We're going to run just another 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to, just in the spirit of democracy on these questions, I'm going to take some of the top questions here. So I'm going to do 3 of them in a row, top 3. So 2 are similar, 1 is a little different. But the first one is, alongside Helsinki, what other cities in Brampton, what other cities is Brampton looking at for inspiration? So that might be a Ken Yvonne and then maybe other questions. But then there's 2 that I also wanted to, Peter Misiak. That first one was Timur Kazi. The next one is Peter Misiak, who's asking, how do you see dealing with large widths of both sides of Steeles and Hurontario, about 10 lanes each? And I presume they carry a lot of traffic, he asks. And it's C, or maybe it's Sean Marshall, is asking, according to what I've seen from Metrolinx, the LRT stop will be located on the south side of Steeles Avenue. I'm concerned about the traffic and dangerous space if this is the case, transferring LRT to bus. How do we make the connection as easy as possible to attract more people to transit? And how will traffic on Main and Hurontario and Steeles be mitigated through the Uptown area? So the second 2 questions are kind of related to some of that fine-grained urban space, road width, how that's all going to work. I know that was touched on in Ken's presentation, but perhaps we can bring some of that back into the Q&A here. The first one is inspiration of other cities. Maybe we can deal with that one first.
So Richard, maybe I can just take a stab at that. I think what's happening now, and I have never seen anything quite like this in my professional career, is a case of simultaneous discovery that is erupting all around the world. So from Melbourne to every one of the Scandinavian countries, it's not just Finland, it's Sweden, Denmark, Norway, to the mayor of Paris, running a campaign on the 15-minute city, to all of our colleagues in all the US cities and other Canadian cities, for, interestingly, for reasons that have a lot to do with public health. I think this is the first time in decades in my career that public health has been so prominent in ideas around community building, and the idea of mental health, physical health, infectious disease, that all of these things are leading us to this idea of compact, walkable places and getting us out of this obsession with automobiles that kind of paralyzed us for 2 or 3 generations and reshaped the urban world. So I think the inspiration is to be found everywhere. And what's really interesting is we're all learning from each other as this happens. And to be more local, pretty much every municipality in the Greater Golden Horseshoe in the 905 has some version or other of what we're talking about emerging. I'm currently working in Yvonne's old stomping ground, which is Markham. I'm working with Vaughan, just to name 2, but pretty much every single one. And the fact that the province of Ontario is making this investment that the minister was describing in 2-way all-day service is actually making it possible for all those municipalities to head down this track. Having said all that, I think Brampton is clearly in the lead in terms of this collaborative approach of bringing all 3 levels of government, the private sector, school boards, all of the agencies together, the private, the kind of things that Dave is talking about from the standpoint of the local business community. I don't think I've ever seen such a convergence of interests kind of gravitating to a guiding idea, which really started for this community in 2018 with the adoption of the 2040 vision and now is bearing fruit. I don't think I've ever seen it in such a complete way.
I would want to add to what Ken was talking about. So particularly, we've been looking at 6 different examples. First one is within City of Melbourne, looking at the origin of the 20-minute neighborhood. And what is interesting about that is not to use that to completely start a new neighborhood, but using that as a mechanism to retrofit and strengthen the existing neighborhood. And also the demographic is quite similar to Brampton, actually. There's a lot of a South Asian population. It's very diverse. The second example we look at is Amsterdam, and we are very critical about comparing the Dutch model and also the Copenhagen model in terms of cycling facilities. So we know that clarity is very important, and also prioritizing, making sure that people as young as 8 years old would be feeling comfortable to use the facilities is critical. And then there are other examples, such as looking at how technology and academics and businesses can bridge together. So that is the Gothenburg example. And a couple of more that I'll just quickly highlight that is worth looking is the New York example, which is really encouraging the city of New York to take the leadership to orchestrate an environment for people to color outside of the lines. So that's a collaborative model that we are incubating in here. And lastly is the Chicago model. And that's why we're bringing in Gensler to talk about opportunity for creating this equitable, inclusive community to ensure that as the TOC is getting developed, affordability is still taken care of.
So Councillor Vicente is on the line, and I'm interested in knowing, I know you've been advocating to move the stop on up to north of Steele Street. So if you want to just throw your thoughts there, I'd appreciate that.
Well, first I want to start by saying when looking at models for other cities for Brampton, I think one of the great cities that we could start out with is Brampton itself. Think about the good bones that we have here in this city, a wonderful network of roads, parks, and green spaces that really creates a wonderful backdrop for us to build on. And so I think that that's important to realize too, that we're really starting from third base here in so many ways. And so with respect to the downtown stop, which at the moment, because of prior decisions of Brampton City Council, for technical reasons, it had to terminate south of the Steeles Avenue intersection. And so early on in this term of council, we realized that that was going to create an issue if we were to decide to eventually build the line to the north. And in fact, when council did make the decision to choose Main Street as the options, and there are 3 options on Main Street that we are looking at, we realized that there was an opportunity to advocate to the provincial government to move the stop to the north side where it really truly belongs. And so that work has been ongoing, and it's nice to see that RioCan, an organization that is partnering so closely with the City of Brampton and working with our planning department, also shares our vision for a stop that is north of the Steeles intersection, so that transit riders can have the shortest distance possible to access the Gateway Terminal. And so that is a priority for us, and not an opportunity goes by where we don't talk about it, as you know, Richard, and I think that's why you picked on me for that question. So.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Does anybody want to touch on the issue of the width of Steeles and Hurontario? Again, I know that did get picked up in the presentation, but Peter Majasik is asking that question.
I jump in a little bit there. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to just as you know, I'm a volunteer with Brampton Board of Trade as well. And so I wanted to acknowledge, you know, Steeles Avenue is a major goods network corridor. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that there are challenges about, you know, our broader consideration of transportation. You know, we hear a lot from our members, and as you know, Brampton is heavy in the logistics industry. We hear in our members that, you know, the 407, which you know, many take Steeles as opposed to the 407 for affordability reasons. So there might be some other things that we have to look at challenging. You know, if you spend a significant amount of time on Steeles, you can see that the heavy trucks, it is really not a pleasant place to be around. So I think it's important to acknowledge again and together figuring out some of these broader problems, because there are going to be some huge challenges, and certainly you know, I know that Steeles Avenue is a regional road as well, so you know, partnership from different levels of government is going to be really, really important to deal with a whole breadth of issues, including, you know, the culture of how we think about transportation and how we think about transit.
After Councillor Vicente, I'd probably like to add something.
I think Michelle answered that quite well, so you go ahead, Dave.
Well, sometimes we have to think outside the box. The reality is when you're fixing your north-south transfer, you know, transit systems, when you have a proper connectivity to Toronto, certainly the amount of cars you have on Steeles Avenue and everywhere else will reduce dramatically, including 401, 407. Because like if I want to go to downtown, right now I have to drive. I don't have a choice, because if I'm coming back late, like once we went for a baseball game with my son, last thing I did was, you know, I had to go, I loved it. And now on my way back, I said, never again. It took me 2 hours to get back. And I think if once your two-way all day go is set up, once your transit, you know, LRT, north, south, east, west is all set up, that will take a lot of the congestion away. Now, I'm not a transport expert, but my common sense tells me a lot more people will use the public transit system versus the street, which helps us become more green. It helps us, you know, building streets and on, and congestion and all
that. Thank you. And Richard, I think we're now just almost at 8:45, and we said we'd go an extra 15 minutes. So that's where we're at now. I think we could have gone a lot longer, obviously. I really want to thank you, everyone, for all our panelists. There's no way that we can do a round of applause on Zoom, but I hope you can hear it, the virtual round of applause coming your way. This was a remarkable presentation, a remarkable conversation, and frankly, it's, as I've said before, remarkable leadership. And part of that remarkable leadership is the fact that we still have almost 150 people on the call, nearly 3 hours in. There's a lot of interest. And I want to say to those who've asked questions but they haven't been answered, please know that they have been recorded. These questions are going to form critical pieces that need to be addressed and will be given definite consideration as we go forward. And this process, of course, is, as mentioned, only just beginning. You see, it feels like it's evolved to the point of fait accompli. That's not the case. This is the beginning of a process. I've never seen a better beginning of a process, but there is going to be a lot of opportunity for the city and all of its partners to work through the myriad questions that will be coming both tonight and in the future. So on behalf of Urban Land Institute Toronto, on behalf of the City of Brampton, on behalf also of University of Toronto School of Cities and the City of Helsinki, I wish you all a very good night. Thank you for this tremendous evening, and we'll look forward to more. Good night.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, and good night, everybody.
Good night.